I mean, the last time I saw you was in London, many yonks ago,
Yeah.
with your late van and the rest of the family. What you been up to since then?
So I've kind of done a bit of everything. I feel like I've lived about 9 lives since then. So I trained as a chef for a little bit. I was working in like a Italian restaurant in my hometown in Helensburgh in Australia once we came back. And then that kind of like sparked a dream to cook for me. And yeah, it took me to like this. I'm not sure how well you know Sydney when you come through, but up in Westfield Tower, there's a fine dining restaurant, and that's kind of where I ended up with my cooking career. I was on the vegetable protein section, so I was doing like purees and soups and that sort of thing. And then if there was any like kind of sweet potato fondants or yeah, that was kind of my job. And then I kind of went into sales for a little bit and. Yeah, I did retail support work, and I never really found anything. And through that whole time, I was kind of like dealing with some of my own stuff, and kind of was neglecting a bit of that. And so, yeah, I decided to kind of take the leap of faith and start building a business. And yeah, that's kind of led me to Equinox. And yeah, so how about we start a little bit with for people that don't know, haven't heard about the Talk Sanctuary, who you are and a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, let's go backwards. I'm originally from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Did all my education, a lot of my training there. I was a certified real estate agent before I moved to London. Did a lot of farm valuations, got shot at quite a few times. Then it was at that point that I decided, you know what, I can't do this no more. And I left Zimbabwe. We were actually going, a friend of mine, we shared the same birthday. So we were on a plane to Malawi, but we slept and the crew forgot about us in the back. And that same plane was going to London.
Yeah.
So when we woke up, here we are at Gatwick Airport. You know, this was unplanned for. We just like, whoa. So Truman, my other friend, like he was totally freaked out because in us we only had 150 US dollars. So in Malawi, 150 US dollars is a lot of money. But in London, as you know,
it goes a long way.
US dollars, you know, that's like money for a couple of one. So Truman decided, no, he's going to come back to Zimbabwe. And I just thought, you know what, flip it. I'm here now. Let me see what I can do. You know what I mean? It's an adventure. It's something new. I was going through a divorce at the time. So I had nothing to lose, really. So I slept 3 nights on Paddington train station. I learned how to navigate London because a lot of the workers on the train station at that point were Black Africans from either Nigeria, Ghana, or from Zimbabwe. So they taught me which parts of the pavement to sleep on, which was actually heated from the bottom. So if you slept on the floor, you really slept well because it was a heated platform. And then they told me when Burger King and McDonald's clear their food, so where you can go and get food. So that I was like really organized. And then after the 3rd day, I thought to myself, you know, I can't keep doing this. I need to be myself because I was really not mentally in the right space because I come from a volatile situation. And I didn't want to go back into real estate proper because I was just irritated with the whole situation. Going through a divorce, 2 kids, no roof over my head. So my structure wasn't there. So the part of me that kicked in was, I need to make some sense of this abnormality. So I took a random bus ride into Brighton and I stopped at one of the arches and I looked at all the guys working in the arches. You know, they were all doing some form of mechanics and stuff like that. So I stopped at one guy in particular, his name was Bob. And I said to Bob, you know, can you teach me this? Because I can't do mechanics to save my life. You know what I mean? So he was really a hot mechanic. So he said, okay, but don't even touch anything. I'll show you the ropes, because that's the way that's the individual that he was, you know what I mean? So I said, okay, no problem. He was a contractor for the council, so that once the council clamped your car, and if you didn't claim it in a certain time, he was part of the destruction team, where he would like strip your wheels, your gearbox, your motor.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest disappointment that I saw was we had to do a Rolls Royce. We had to do a few Porsches, you know?
Oh my God.
And you think, these guys must have this money. How could they let the car go? Because if you looked at the amount of the tickets were like between 150 and 200 pounds. And you're thinking, but this guy's got Rolls Royce. I'm sure he's got that kind of money. But he didn't collect his car within a week. So they uplift the car. And I promise you, I kid you not when I say this, Jamie. After we take it, they weigh it, they pay us for that portion of the contract, and then the rest of the car goes straight to a crusher, and they make this thing into a meter by meter box. Like, while you're watching, to make sure that, because you got to sign off that the car was like destroyed. And I'm just thinking, it's a Rolls Royce. You know what I mean? Even if I didn't have an engine or wheels, just that body alone is like, at that time, was like buying an apartment in a studio apartment.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I did that for quite a bit. And then an Egyptian guy came in, and he had an urgent gearbox job. One of the flywheels was not engaging properly, and he needed to go to Scotland. So he pitched up late afternoon, and he said he needed to pick up the car at like 11 o'clock at night. So we worked on his car, fixed it, Bob tested it, it was all right. He came, he picked it up, he asked me where I am, what do I do, and stuff like that. I didn't think much of it, because a lot of people in Brixton are talkers, you know what I mean? So I left it like that, and he came back 2 weeks later. He gave me his wife's card. She was working at the Novotel, and he said, go see her and she'll sort you out. Now, bear in mind, at this time, my work permit still wasn't in place. I didn't have status, but he said to me, look, go see her, she'll sort you out. Okay. So I went to the hotel, and sure as daylight, she said, oh, you helped my husband sort out the car? She said, yeah. On the spot, she hired me. Okay. So now I'm thinking mentally, I got food again, you know what I mean? I got food, I got a warm interior, I got everything going for me. But I tell you, Jamie, the most difficult thing for me was I never cleaned anyone else's toilet except my toilet. You know what I'm saying? So I had to clean toilets. I cried the first day I had to clean toilets. It was some of the messiest toilets in the hotel, because it was like in the staff section of the hotel, right? Next to the kitchen. So I really, and I held the toilet seat and I said, you know what, God, this is what you've reduced me to. Because I'm a surveyor, right? So at that point, and I said, God, if this is what you really want me to do, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the toilets the cleanest, the kitchen the cleanest. So I did this, that on the fourth day, the kitchen was spotless. The toilets, because the head chef was a pain in the ass. He was French. Okay? French. Yeah. So 80% of the people in the kitchen were French. So his assistant chef, head chef, said to him, you know what? There's something wrong with Lenton. Everybody we've had in that section has never cleaned like this. You know what I mean? There must be something in his story that's different. Let's give him a try as a commie chef. Wow. Okay. Nice one. So they told me, look, today you finish, but 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, you must be here when the breakfast run starts. We're going to teach you how to do the breakfast, okay? Then you're going to stay after the breakfast run to prepare for the mise en place for the breakfast for tomorrow, and then prepare with the team for the lunch mise en place and see how they do stuff, just in case we're short. Then you need to fill the gaps in one of those places. Jamie, I did that so well for them that when that entire team was being promoted to the Novotel Hammersmith, which is like the gym in the Novotel group, which has got the biggest auditorium, and that's where they hold a lot of fairs just down the road from Olympia, they insisted to the management that they must take me. So the first thing I had to do when I was there, they said, right, you need to organize the kitchen, all right? You need to make sure we get rid of all the dead wood, because, I mean, the kitchen I was working in at Novotel, to give you scope, was like 4 by 5.5 meters. You know what a commercial kitchen's like.
Yeah.
The bigger the space, the bigger the problem. The less the space, the more organized you become. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Yeah. Now, when I was at Novotel Hammersmith, I mean, the kitchen was like just over the size of a tennis court. Now we're talking big league, because the rate of people staying in the hotel, where was it? Novotel, the limit was like 150 covers, okay?
Yeah.
Guaranteed in terms of rooms a night. Novotel went to 450, 500. So whatever you were doing at Lambert was like a small amount compared to like now. So mentally, I had to scale, right? And I got my confidence back with all this, with the French. A lot of people say to me, but you know, why didn't I stay in it? Yeah, I could have, Jamie, to be honest with you. But my passion was still in development, because that's what I was trying to do. But the one thing that chefing taught me that I don't think, and I'll never regret going through the chefing course ever until the day I die.
Yeah.
It taught you project management. If people don't understand project management, they must go to be a commie chef. All right? Because it
tragic
teaches
management? What do you mean tragic management?
It teaches you preparation. If you don't prepare in the middle of a shift and you forgot to cut carrots, how are you going to do that in the middle of a shift? How are you going to make your burger buns in the middle of a shift? If your chips were not prepped for your fryer, how are you going to do that in the middle shift? Because, you know, a lot of the stuff in the cold rooms, you took out the night before because you needed to thaw them, temperature. So you put them in a separate fridge, ready, where all your mise en place was ready. You had your expectations and over. And if you didn't have that enough, you can be sure the head chef, the banquet manager, and everyone else was on your ass for this thing.
Yeah, I definitely annoyed many a head chef in my time when I was in the kitchen by not having enough sauces ready, or like running out of ice cream halfway through service, and like then you're like, I gotta run to the cool room or the walk-in freezer. And it's midway through a busy service, I can definitely relate to the stress that puts on you. And it's definitely like a make or break kind of environment. Like some people thrive in that kind of like high stress and some people don't. I did for a bit, but towards the end I was just I just walked out of like that role, and like it was my dream job, and I was just like, some dreams can be wrong, I guess. But I see what you mean when it's like it teaches you about life, because like there's a lot of people that go into adulthood without knowing how to cook, or like you said with like crisis management, like if something unexpected happens in your life, like it is really good. And then also just kind of like something that I found beneficial for my day from chefing is having a to-do list and being able to prioritize what needs to be done in like a priority order. And by doing that, you can like really run your day much more efficiently. And that's kind of what I found like really carried through into everyday life as well. So how did you go from cooking into like being inspired to create the Talk Sanctuary?
So when I had finished, because now my confidence was back, 3 years with the Noble Child Group. So I decided to set up my own kitchen, okay, and get to see if, because when I was in Zimbabwe, I had my own business. So I wanted to now see if I could do the same in a foreign country and see if I had the knack for it. So I set up in a place called Riverside Business Center in Wandsworth, and I set up my own kitchen there. Simple kitchen. I created the fruit salad that you like saw at Sainsbury's, Tesco's, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So because I saw how they did it in the hotel, so I decided, you know what, let me set my business model up on this, but let me target all the 5-11, 7-Elevens, cafe type shops and see how this is going to take, because they also part of the bigger chain in selling sandwiches and things.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I first did only fruit salads, right? I did them with the balls, you know, the scoop. I did that. Watermelon, the melons, and occasionally I added kiwi and grapes just to make it look different. I tell you, Jamie, it gave me 700 pounds a day just doing that. Just doing that. And you know, my day started at like 3:30 in the morning. You needed to see this, okay? I had my chef in top on with a jacket, all right? And I had these turquoise chef trousers, my chef shoes. I would catch the bus. I had this big cooler box with 48 fruit salads in. You know, those cooler boxes that they use like to keep frozen fish in?
Yeah.
Mine had ice at the bottom and the fruit salads. I'd catch the bus on the one street right through to Battersea, jump off, go from shop to shop until that box was cleared, get on the bus back in the business center. I'd go. I was back by 7 o'clock. I set up for the guys in the business center, morning coffees, sandwiches, 10 o'clock, the same, and then 1 o'clock run, and then close. I tell you, I really enjoyed the stress and the pressure of that, because I don't think I would have been able to do that if I hadn't done the chefing thing first, because it taught me how to be organized and the principles of the business. And it was through that I met Adele, who was my wife, who you met as well. I was doing a lot of contract work for the NHS. I was supplying them platters and that kind of thing. And I also supplied for the Deputy Prime Minister at that time, which was John Prescott. I did a function for him, which was in Wandsworth. And that like kind of escalated me a little bit. People began to know me because I walked. People saw me in my crazy chef jeans, you know, and I became that identified icon with that. So that when I scaled the business to the point of I could now get my own car, and both my cars, I kid you not, Jamie, were cars I picked up from the side of the road. Because you know, in the UK, once people don't want cars, they just leave them on the road. All right, the keys are there, everything. Yeah. So I went, checked it, got them cleared. I had 2 cars. One was a micro van, and one was a Ford Escort. Joe, cost me total £300 to have them licensed in my name and everything. Perfect. I didn't have major capital outlay, but I had a bucky that I could run around with and do my deliveries. And then on the weekends, I used to do courier work as well for a company called Pegasus that wanted ad hoc deliveries. A lot of guys didn't want to like work the weekends, but I was fearless. I wanted income. So Some of these rides took me outside London. I got to know a lot more of inner and outer London because of that career job, to be honest with you. It took me to places I never knew existed in London. So beautiful.
And you get to know all the back alleys as well.
Exactly. So I knew how to through crazy places, And I must admit, I only ever got a ticket once because of the London charge. I forgot to top up the day before. But otherwise, I didn't. My wife, using my car, collected tickets up to £2,500, Jamie. Yeah, driving in bus lanes. Can you imagine that? Driving in a bus lane, of all things. And it's red for a reason. It's red for a reason. As you know, London, it's like a no-go. And she was like, I wonder why nobody uses this. And I just zipped through traffic. Oh, really? Yeah. And there comes the ticket with the picture, Jamie, Yeah. And look whose face it is. Oh, I'm not supposed to use the bus lane. Yeah, definitely not. So at that point, Jamie, I sold my business out to an Iranian, who was also in the sandwich business. I really liked him. He was married to a South African, but his personality, because he was in the same shops that I was supplying. And to be frank with you, my sandwiches were a lot better than his, obviously because I had the hotel background. So I knew from the stats what was selling and how to turn it quickly. Everybody there went for mayonnaise, cheese, tuna, chicken mayo, cheese and tomato. I went a bit foreign from that in the sense that I went for smoked products. So I was different. And my sandwiches on a return every Fridays were never more than 10. Never more than 10. So I gave away a lot of that because I didn't want to throw it away. Coming from Africa, waste not, want not, recycle. So there were a few shelters, gave away that food to them. But it also got to the point where my feet were itching now because I wanted to get back in what I'm good at. So I interviewed for real estate. I started with Heart Real Estate. For 6 months, I was with them. I scaled up. I went to another estate agent called Oliver Burns, which also gave me a platform. And it was in Oliver Burns that I had the opportunity, because I was listening to the radio station. They were talking about developments on the eastern part of London for the London Olympics, right, the 2012 Olympics. So I really thought to myself, I really want to get back into construction, project management, property development. So I was interviewed by a company called CPC Projects. It took a process, about 6 weeks before they came back to me and employed me. I was successful with that. Started out with small projects. Then I was put onto the London Olympic project. That for me was gold dust because it allowed me, it was a project from where I had come from, Zimbabwe, where they were doing compensation for land and all this. So we had to do the same thing there. And you would think that because it's England and it's amicable, that money flows, put business people across the table and things would happen. I had West Ham buses and I had East Ham and First Group, okay, the Scottish group. These guys sitting around the table would not agree with each other for above soap. It's just like, no, 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 no. Do you know what I mean? Even if your concept was the best instance bubblegum, Jamie, it wasn't moving. their land. They wanted to do what they wanted to do. So it took a lot of convincing. So I asked my line manager at the time, I said to him, but why do you throw me in the deep end of this? And he said, hey, you're not white, okay? You come from Africa. You've come through situations of animosity and conflict. You're the best person that I can send in the room because you're not affiliated with any of these cultures, all right? And you got nothing to lose, but everything to gain. So I saw what he was trying to say, that I would stick to the letter and not be conflicted in the interests of each of the parties. And over a series of 3 months, I managed to win over First Group, because First Group was the key to unlocking this, right? And then when First Group said, yes, they want to move, that was now the catalyst to move them out of the Olympic Park. You can Google this. If you want, I'll send you some data on it. The West Ham is the only green bus garage station that the entire UK has. And I'm pleased to say I was part of that development. So I stayed on there until September 2006. And I had problems with my status. So CPC Project said, you know what, we'll take you on, but you can't be here while we go through the process. So income was tight, but I did have this letter from the Home Affairs, which gave me some form of status. So I went to work for a company called Class and Golf. I must say it elevated my thinking totally outside the box, Jamie, because these guys did projects that were like.
So what was the name of that last one that you're talking about now? I couldn't quite hear it.
Class and Golf. Class and Golf. Yeah. These guys did projects that were cutting edge, seriously cutting edge type projects. So I became part of the team that worked on Credit Suisse upgrade. Credit Suisse had 2 buildings in Canary Wharf that were joined together, but both separate times, okay? So they didn't layer the same. So now they needed to shift the floor levels of the trading floor, but the trading floor couldn't close. The trading floor needed to stay open 24/7 because it worked globally, all right? And you had 400 traders on this floor trading all the time. And a glitch on the computer would cost the company £10,000 per glitch, okay? So we went into this storm. I call it a storm room. What if, what if, what if? They did this over like a 6-month period while they were going through getting different analysis on the aircon system, on the cable system. Anybody who could contribute, even if you were the T guy, who could contribute on making a difference on why this shouldn't be done or that shouldn't be done. It was the first organization that I saw that gave impetus to everybody. Everybody had a platform, you know, and it came down to 3 glitches in the end. And those 3 glitches would be at different times in the construction, okay? So they were happy with that. Now we needed to do the mock-ups for the air conditioning system, so that when we raised the floor now, the temperature was going to change in the trading floor. So what they did is they went to different engineering companies and say, create the system that vacuums the heat off. Because, you know, the traders those days had like 6 computers in front of them, but the amount of heat they generated off those panels was excessive in the room. So they said, right, for every desk, we need you to take this air up, recycle it, bring it back to the bottom, and cool the system.
Yeah.
It took the big engineers like Arab, Haley Palmer Flat, those guys failed. Hyder, they all failed. It took one youngster who used to be an air conditioning specialist, but he was like a few years out of college, that he used to bug around in his father's garage. Okay. So his father had like a boiler in the garage, and he figured out a system to regulate the garage. So he created this thing, okay, this mock-up. And he wanted 250,000 pounds for his mock-up, okay? But his mock-up worked. And you should see the senior engineers, how they were frothing at the mouth, because why? This guy did what they couldn't do. But if you look like what the brief was, it was a no-brainer. You could see he understood exactly what was said. So his system, I mean, it made him an overnight millionaire. I think his payment was something like 10 or 12 million pounds. I mean, that's shot him into where he wanted to be with his business, because now he had to replicate this thing. So he had scale and scope, and the project was successful. I did a social housing project for Camden as well. And at that point, I left the UK. I traveled back to Zimbabwe. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. And also, I had to go sort out my work permit for CPC. So it gave me a good grounding to be home again, because I hadn't been home for like 10 years in that time. So it was good to play catch up with everyone. So did my processing. And while I was there waiting my work permit to be processed, I had an opportunity. A friend of my mom called to say, look, what's your son doing? So she said, no, he's just waiting for his work permit to come through. So I was invited to Namibia on behalf of the Namibian government. And I had to turn around an SOE that was failing. So I went for a week. I was interviewed by Gareth.
What's an SOE? Sorry.
State-owned enterprise.
Okay. Sorry, my bad.
No problem. So Gareth Rossley, who's now late, he was like a top business turnaround psychologist. He interviewed me for this, based on the recommendation he had from the recruitment company. And he said to me, look, you don't really need all your skill sets here. You just need your common sense, your wit about you, and you can do this job. So the first thing I did for a week, I had to register all the roads in Namibia in the trial period. So which means I traveled Namibia, north, south, east, west. I knew the country. I traveled this country. And that travel alone, I enjoyed it. Because it was like a free holiday. You know what I'm saying, Jamie? You're traveling through
what's Namibia like? Like I haven't been anywhere in Africa, so like I don't know what it's like. Like I've obviously seen pictures of some places, and it's a lot greener than you think. Like in some places, obviously.
It's like a country time forgot. Seriously, it's very modern, but slow, cultured. The working population, to give you context, in the whole country, because there's only 1.8 million people in the country. So the working population, is only 350,000 people. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
So it was interesting. So when I got back, I was asked, do you want to sit on the bus? So I said yes. But now my work permit also came through for the UK at the same time. So I asked the UK, can I come back now? And at that time, the crash had just started, 2008.
The real estate crash.
So, yeah, because remember that housing crash affected a lot of people globally. So they said, no, you can't come back at this time. If you find something, let us know. So I said, okay. I gave it a week, came back to them and I said, look, I got this opportunity in Namibia. Can I take this opportunity? So they said, yeah, no, you can, but let us know how it's going and we'll let you know how it's going too. So I would travel to the UK every quarter, all right, just to see if my seat was still warm and stuff like that. But I got stuck. I was given a 3-year contract in Namibia. I fulfilled that 3-year contract in a year, Jamie, in a year. I had a
So were you using some kind of like technology to do that? Like what were they using the mapping for? Was that like early days of Google Maps or Safari Maps, or I think it's called Apple Maps now, I can't remember. But.
Yeah, you see what it is they came with all the old systems because they were under the apartheid government rule, because that was part of South Africa before it became Namibia. All right.
Yeah.
So a lot of their systems were still like, you got to work in a closed office. I mean, I almost got arrested day one when I said we're going to do an open plan. Whoa, Davey, they freaked out. They freaked out. When I said everyone's going to work in this warehouse, we're going to move out of head office, we're going to lease head office to get an income, and we're going to take one of the warehouses that we had. It had aircon and everything. And I said, we'll put everybody here and we'll set up a cubicle that we use for client meetings and boardroom sort of a thing. Do you know what I mean? But everybody open plan. Because I said, there's no reason anybody can't be open plan. We're doing the same business. I was reported to the Minister of Transport. It even got to the President. I was even summoned to go and explain myself about this. You know what I mean? Because they've never heard of or seen open plan before. You know what I mean? So
you're right.
Then I said to them, you know what? You need to go to Heathrow Airport, because Heathrow at that time had Amadeus and some of the other bigger clusters. All those glass buildings at Heathrow got open plan. So they physically went to check what I was saying. And they couldn't believe that, all these things. I said, that's the way the world is going. Open plan.
Yeah.
So came back. I got this signed off very quickly. And because you couldn't do the private call thing anymore, you had to work now because you've been monitored and everyone can see what you're doing. This turned around nicely, But we needed still to get some of the skill sets. A lot of the people studied at good universities, but they didn't know how to roll out what they studied. It was like textbook stuff. And then you say, right, but you're in the live environment now. You've got a problem. How do you do it? People are great when they can copy and paste. But now when you got to deal with reality, there's no more copy and paste. Huh? Now you got to use your intuition, and you're in a situation and you've got to make it
and logical thinking and like scientific method and
Exactly. So you must know, I walked into R500 million worth of debt. R500 million at that time was like about like 10 million pounds worth of debt that the company had owned. And my job was to level that debt and get the company back into profit. Okay? Which was quite difficult because you're dealing a lot with the government interference. One, you're dealing with people thinking about you're a foreigner, can't tell us what to do. I get it, no issues, not offended by them, but you don't know what I know. And you need to know what I know in order for you to make this thing work. So either we can do this thing and you guys all lose your jobs, or we can fix it together. You guys got longer job life in this thing. So, and part of that, Jimmy had to get rid of like 200 people. Okay.
Yeah.
Which wasn't
that would have been
fun.
tough.
Yeah. And I got rid of some of the people that were pain in the asses. People who just didn't want to adjust to the change, very set in their ways. But as soon as they saw the numeration and the termination packages, people are human. They jump at the money and they don't see the bigger picture. Because you and I would be, if I'm a senior consultant and you terminating me at this organization, I'm going to leave nicely, because at some point you're going to call me back to consult for you, because there's stuff that you're still not sure about. And you're going to need. These guys didn't want to have anything to do with that, which was great, because some of them really did wood. Some of them we did fall back on an ad hoc basis, and they made economic sense for the business. I did the biggest contract negotiation for them between a Lebanese company and the Namibian government, which was to redo a 750-kilometer road. At that time, it was the biggest in Africa. Okay.
Yeah.
And this came across my desk. So the corrupt elements within the structure wanted to do this negotiation outside myself. And I was extremely compliant at that time. I wouldn't hear of it. I mean, I walked into situations where the Chinese brought like 2 million in cash to try and get this type of contract, because this contract would, like any business gets this contract, I mean, it like sets you up for 5 years, easy. You don't need to worry, and your cash flow is locked for a 10-year period. That's how big it was. So when I had finished and completed that, you get the feeling when people are trying to shove you out because they've got other agendas. And I didn't want to be at the brunt end of, I got deported or expelled from a country, because I've never ever had a situation like to myself. But I made sure I dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's, handed over my stuff, and moved back to London. CPC still wasn't ready for me at that time, so I started working for the NHS. There was a company.
What were you doing in the NHS? Because that's the health service back in England, hey?
Yeah. Now, in the NHS, they've got the coffee shops.
Yeah.
There's a company called Peabody's Coffee. You must Google it. They were the only organic coffee supplier at the time in the country, okay, who sold their coffees en masse, but only through the NHS group. So if you wanted a good coffee, or you wanted to buy their beans, you could only buy it through their stores. The Peabody's is owned by Italians, obviously. And the Italian food system is fantastic. The coffee was exceptional. I mean, you didn't need milk for this coffee to be smooth. This coffee was just state of the art. You know?
The world is powered by coffee after all as well.
Exactly. So I enjoyed that. Adele got pregnant during that time as well. And she got mugged a few times on the tube while she was pregnant. And she got hit a few times while she was pregnant. And she says, you know what? I can't do this anymore. So we waited. She gave birth at St. George's. A month after that, we left, came to South Africa. We didn't have a plan per se, but I networked quickly backwards to Namibia. I got engaged with ABB. I'm sure you know what ABB is, massive electrical contractor. So they were doing interviews for a project in the south of the country. It's a mine called Roshpina Mine. Exaro, which is a South African company, mine company, was selling to Glencore, and they needed to upgrade this mine because the cables at night and the electricity wires at night were so red hot that the insurance company wouldn't insure the mine anymore. But it was a condition that Exaro needed to upgrade in order for Glencore to buy the mine. So I went in for this interview, right? On paper, my qualification is not an issue. In practicality, I've never ever done a mining job to save my life. Okay. So, but with a little bit of credit Swiss on how we did the cabling and stuff, that sort of thing, because it was such an iconic project, it sits in you, you know? So I argued a few things over the desk. Now, the one thing that the guy who interviewed me knew who I was, Jamie. The rest of the board didn't know who I was. Now, you see my name, Jamie, in Afrikaans and in South Africa is white. Until you open the door and you realize I'm not white, then that becomes an issue. So Namibia at that point was still very biased towards white, colored, black, okay? Didn't worry me because, hey, I'm married to a white person. No issues. But for them, issues. So the interview, Jamie, was 15 minutes flat. 15 minutes flat. I didn't need to talk a single word. I just needed to listen. I apologize for how I'm going to tell it to you on the podcast, but this is exactly how it went down, okay? You think you're fucking smart? Get your fucking ass out of here. I'm giving you fucking 6 weeks. You fuck this thing up, you fucking out of this country, you'll never get another fucking job here. Did I make myself fucking clear? There's all the fucking paperwork. Now get fuck out of here. That was it. That was it. Right? So I got the job. No problem. I read the entire scope because it was a 2,200 kilometer drive from Windhoek to the mine. So I read the entire scope through that entire drive, got to the mine, did the induction. They couldn't find me for 8 hours, Jamie. I found somebody who could walk me through the scope when I was there. Yeah. And he showed and told me everything from the day these guys got on site, what shit they did, every single thing. So by the time I came out, the hunting squad was waiting for me, right? Again, the F sandwich came out. So they said, what did you learn? So we went for a debriefing in there. There was a whiteboard. I wrote every single thing that I had found out that was right with this project, that was wrong with this project, and what they need to do to turn this thing around. Okay? So they said 2 weeks. The board said 6 weeks. Now you're telling me 2 weeks to turn this thing around. Okay, no problem. 2 weeks. The engineers from Pretoria were coming down in 2 weeks' time. That's why they wanted this. So if the engineers had found fault in what I was doing, they had an excuse to fire me off the project, right? The first problem I had, Jamie, the project manager for this contract was only arriving 11 o'clock in the morning to site. And on the mine, you start at 6:30 in the morning. So yeah, you've got 60 guys on site who don't know what they're going to roll out for the day, and they do their own thing, okay?
Yeah.
And what made it worse is they cut the mine off power 3 times and cost the mine 15,000 rand in that downtime. On top of that, so you must know, everybody's looking. You bring this black person to come and fix this problem when we've got so many other black people who are messing up this whole thing. But for me, it was a simple thing. if your leadership's not there on time, obviously the mice are going to play. Simple. All right. 2, there was a program, but nobody was looking at the program or following the program and trying to get to the milestones of the program. Okay. So I had to like kind of go backwards and reset the clock, but reset it and still fix, because it was a straightforward system. Okay. You needed to work in one section to move from the bottom of the mine through the crushing, right out to the processing and out. Now they touch the bottom, they touch the processing in different places, and then they touch the finished product in different places. So everything was like half-assed at this point. And
it wasn't like all automated or connected up together.
Yeah. So now you needed to make this thing work. So I said, you know what? When is the next mine shutdown? Because the mine had shutdowns every week, all right, for between 6 to 8 hours, so that it fixed its own systems. So I said, every shutdown that the mine has, we're going to fix one section until we get this thing right. I tell you, we did that. I turned it around. In 2 weeks' time, the team came in force to come and see what I had done. And it was like, okay, shortest site visit ever, 20 minutes, Jamie. 20 minutes on an 84-hectare site. 20 minutes, huh?
Yeah.
You seem to know what you're doing. We'll see you back at the end of the month. Okay. So now, before they came back at the end of the month, I needed to catch up on quite a bit of work with cabling, because we were doing 180 mil cables. Now, the 180 mil cables, Jamie, are the massive cables. You need, like when you're taking it off the drum, you need like 36 guys to pull this cable and carry this cable so that you can terminate it up to the CCs and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to catch up on time. Now, the mine was doing a lot of stoppages at night for hazardous purposes. And I thought, this is my opportunity. I need to get this right. So what we did is I put in a request. I said to him, I need money to feed the guys, and you need to pay the guys overtime for what I'm going to do. Again, I got this pushback and said, if this doesn't work, it's coming off your money. I said, no problem. Let's do this. I tell you, the amount of work we did in the week was equivalent to 2 months' job of cabling. These guys knew that they were getting paid overtime, they were getting free meals, and not just a normal meal, Jamie. I got the local hotel, right? Everyone was getting like 2 burgers and chips, proper Coke, and a proper dessert. So these boys were like,
well fed.
Let's do this. Yes, you're the man. We pushed this thing, Jamie. We pushed this thing to the point that when the engineers came again, I mean, the engineers took me out now. And they wanted to know more about me. And yet, it wasn't rocket science. If you process driven and you know systems, you know, and basic project management, I tell people, if you look at where you should have learned project management, just go back to your mother. At the end of every month, she made sure the fridge was full, the washing, simple structure system. You know what I mean? But we overlook all that good stuff and we think it's nonsense until you're living on your own and you see how disorganized you are. Then you think, shit, I need to get structure, you know? But it's your basic form of project management. And I did it so well that my tenure came to an end in Namibia. So now I was stuck in South Africa. I went for a few interviews. A few of the white counterparts said, look, they can't employ me because I would take over their jobs because of my experience and my skills and my qualifications. I didn't have a hump about it, to be honest with you. I didn't.
But so it wasn't based off of merit?
Sorry?
It wasn't based off of merit, like a meritocracy? Sort of?
It was, but in some of the places, some of these guys have been in those job roles for ever with no qualifications.
The old guard.
So now if you come in at sort of like 3/4 his salary and you outperform him, management flags it and he could be stuffed out. You know what I mean? So I thought to myself of Peabody's, of what Peabody was doing. So I wrote to Starbucks. I asked them, can I do their coffee and set up a coffee shop in South Africa? Starbucks at that point were not receptive. So they said, I can sell coffee, but I must buy it from the distributors and I can't buy it from them directly, okay? Because I'm not a licensed agent. All right, no problem. So I went to Pick and Pay, Checkers. It's equivalent to like your Woolies, but a supermarket chains here in South Africa.
Okay.
So Pick and Pay gave me the opportunity on the platform to put Starbucks coffee in their shops. I tell you, Jamie, as the container was coming down, we putting it on the shelves, this coffee disappeared. I mean, I had even management at one point, we had just decanted the entire container and it was the last row left. So the guy came up to us and said, so when do you guys think you're going to finish this? I said, it's finished. He said to me, what you mean? I said, the container is empty. We filled the shelves. Your customers have bought out the entire stock. That was it. They almost fell off their chairs because they didn't think it was that hot.
Yeah.
Then I got into a clash with Checkers. Checkers is another brand, quite a big brand in South Africa. They wanted to do the same thing. So I took them to task and it was getting ugly, right? So I decided, you know what? I'm not prohibited to have my own coffee shop, okay? And whatever coffee beans I sell through my coffee shop is my problem. Doesn't infringe anybody. So what I did is I did a Starbucks logo in an industrial center. Jamie, between 6 in the morning to 7:30 in the morning, that was like a day's take-in just on coffee. Just on coffee. And I wasn't even selling it latte, just normal brewed coffee. Starbucks coffee, black or white, finished. Just the name Starbucks. People just queued up for this because they saw the logo, all right? And it
was like familiarity.
Exactly. So it really did well for me. It really did well for me. I did that for 10 months. And then I was called to KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, the Durban area where I am, by a former boss of mine who we had worked with in the UK. And he said to me, look, he's having problems with some of the school projects that he's working on, because he was working on 34 schools. We were rebuilding schools in the KZN area. And he wasn't the, how can I say, the best person to communicate with people of color. He was difficult, arrogant to a point, but he knew his shit. He knew his shit, but he just didn't have the fuse to mentor and train people. Okay, he wanted what was right, what was perfect, and what was in his head, but he never relayed all those things. And he just saw the finished product and would critique the finished product over and over. And you know, not just as Jamie or Lenton, but if you get constantly bashed negatively, it has an impact on you. So I was brought, exactly. So I was brought in, I was given half of those schools. I did it well. He subsequently got fired from the job and I took over the role totally. It didn't feel comfortable, if you know what I mean. Your boss brings you in, you supersede your boss, and he gets, fired from the position. But I did that very well, and I completed it. I then progressed to a company called Focus Project Management. Focus put me in another SOE in South Africa called COGTA, COGTA. COGTA like manages the municipalities' fund and budgets from government level.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into that. I enjoyed it. I also found a lot of misuse of funds within some of these structures, as you can imagine, in municipalities. And then I was moved to a project in Central Africa, the Central African Republic. We had to do a refurbishment on an airport and a runway in that country. So I was posted there for just under a year. I had to learn French quickly. The funny thing is, I could speak less, but I could read and write and understand more than I could speak.
Yeah, that's something that always blew me away with like certain cultures over there. Like you hear a lot about like English colonizers, but then there's quite a lot of parts in like in Africa and in the Middle East that like the older generation speaks French as well, or can read and write French. And I found that out about people in Lebanon. It's like that, like the older generation, older people in Lebanon also speak French as well, and some of the younger people too.
Absolutely. And what I found is that because I could read and write, it served my purpose. And I'd go into a room as a non-French speaking person, but I could understand everything they're saying, Jamie. You know what I mean? Even the negative. I'd make mental notes because there was always some smart ass. If you did physical notes, he was watching you. So I made a lot of mental notes. I did move the project along. It was pulling teeth type project in the sense that there were so many hidden agendas politically in that place. Everybody had an interest in not seeing the project move unless they were financially enumerated. Okay, so it brought the element of corruption to my level where I never saw it before to that scale. I heard about it, I read about it, but I never physically saw it until I was in that situation. And that's where I also saw that life and death has a lot of play. Because the senior French engineer for that project was thrown from the 13th floor building at 6 o'clock in the morning. Till this day, no one knows who did it. But we who are on the ground can summarize who was behind that kind of motive. All right. I was recalled back to head office. I was sectioned because they said I wasn't listening to the instructions, the management strategy. But what they didn't realize, Jamie, and this you can Google for yourself, the sitting president of the Central African Republic is a PhD physicist, not through an African university. He was schooled in France at all the top universities, right? That he still lectures at the University of Bangui in the capital, okay? He still finds in his day, every week, to go and attend lectures. Jamie, at that time, I was doing my MBA. I was doing statistics, right? In my MBA. I had asked for permission to do the course, some of the course outside of the country. So they gave me permission to do that. I was the only idiot in that classroom, Jamie. Everybody else had a pen and a pencil. I was the only guy with a calculator. And these guys would outwit me super fast. And you know, statistics is complicated maths.
Yeah.
These youngsters were doing it faster on pen and paper than me on a calculator. I was in awe of them. And you must know, that university, there's no windows there, Jamie. It's just open vents. The floors look like they haven't been cleaned for a bit. Everything is dismal, but the acumen and the hunger for this education in that environment was first class. Seriously. We overlook like how somebody dresses or someone's presentation or demeanor. I mean, these guys in maths, economics, geography, and science were like leaps and bounds ahead. They knew their stuff. They knew the environment. They knew the study so well. I now had a different take on, because having lived and worked in that environment, because there's no fat people there, Jamie. I promise you. It's the first country I saw in my entire life. There's no fat people. There's nothing. I promise you. No fat people, right? They don't eat breakfast, lunch, and supper. They eat when they're hungry only, because the country's been in civil war every 5-year cycle. So people
and so that produces famines or like crop failures because people have got to go fight in the war. Or
exactly. So you must know, even like during the war times, people didn't bury bodies in the cemeteries because there was no food. So people used to go and scavenge on bodies. So people now bury bodies in their backyards, okay, to avoid that situation. You know, normally when you go to an outlying area or a bad area, even in Australia, I'm sure there is, you'd always find cats, dogs, or something, you know, some animal or children. Dear Jamie, no kids. Kids were part of the food chain during the struggle, okay? So there was like a missing 20-year generation. No kids, no dogs, no cats, no nothing. All they meet is daily imported on cows that come through from Cameroon. Slaughtered fresh, supplied, and gone by the end of the day. Straightforward. So it's a situation that you live for today. You don't plan and live for tomorrow. No, because you don't know what's going to happen. I found this system so unique, and yet they've been through some immense atrocities. You know, it is one of the wealthiest African countries and the smallest on the continent. And the greed between the European powers trying to maintain it like that so that they can take what they need to take by also offering aid.
Were they taking like minerals out of the land from like the indigenous populations there? Or
diamonds, Jamie. I'll send you a picture of the diamonds in my hand. I mean, these diamonds were the sizes of big marbles. I mean, each diamond must have been about 12 carats, easily.
And so, in a population where you've lost, sorry to interrupt, but in a population where you've lost like a 20-year gap in the population, like how do you start coming back from that? Like, what's the kind of solution in Central Africa there, like to start building back the population?
Well, the whole country is supposed to be, they say 14 million people, right? Yeah. But in Bangui, where I worked, the capital, there was less than 10,000 people. That even when we needed to employ people, Jamie, we had issues. The people make more money on their own, all right? They earn like $50 a day. There's no beggars there at all. That was the first country I saw. No beggars whatsoever, okay? Everybody is guaranteed to make $50, whether you're selling paper, pencils, peanuts, secondhand clothes, spares, whatever, motorbike, carrying people, but everybody made money. So here we were trying to employ people by doing the right thing and saying, you know what, guys, we're going to employ you. We're going to give you guys $500 a month. I looked at you and said, fly, man, I make more money than that in a month. We had to switch in the deal and say, you know what, we're going to train you. We're going to give you overalls, shoes. You're going to get a certificate at the end of the training. And even at that, it was still a mission, because that's how ingrained that economy has become, and that society has become, not to rely on formal education, because formal education hasn't got even those who are in formal education anyway. The structures in government, apart from the extreme hierarchy that's super educated, the others, it's all nepotism, an African problem. Because I know Jamie's father brought Jamie, and brought Jamie's friend, that sort of a thing. So that whenever you want favors, Jamie knows he's not qualified to be in the position, but he's going to run with the corruption favor because he has to, and he has to keep it quiet, that sort of a thing. But whereas if you've got somebody who's skilled and intuitive, they say, but hey, you can't do that. Yeah. So a lot of that still existed, all right? But people think, yeah, no, you can change these things. No, Jamie, you can't change these things overnight in Africa. You will die. I want you to Google, when we finish our podcast, a guy called DJ Warras, Warras. Yep. Okay. He was a famous DJ, okay, and in the entertainment industry, and then moved into entrepreneurship, and he was assassinated earlier this week, okay, because he was going into areas of gangland and trying to plight the areas of what the gangs are doing, how they're hijacking buildings, and he was trying to fix those hijacked buildings, making them proper buildings, getting proper tenants, and they killed him like a dog on the side of the street. You'll see his one podcast with a guy called Penwell. You should watch that one, all right? That's his most outstanding podcast, where he breaks down the South African narrative, the South African context of each of the cultures, the economy, the state of play politically, economically, and to a certain extent, the migrant problem and the gangs involved in all these things. People don't realize that.
Are these problems from like when it was colonized? They kind of came over. It was the Dutch, right, that came to South Africa, and a lot of Africa, as well as the French and the English. But do you think like a lot of these problems are kind of left over from kind of claiming independence again, and then not really having much oversight on that, or like how did it end up getting so ingrained in the kind of culture politically and socially?
So you see, what happened is, when apartheid ended, a lot of white people took their money and left. Okay, so a lot of these commercial buildings were just left idle. So what a lot of people say, but how can that guy have left his investment? That guy wasn't stupid. Okay, the white community knew a year in advance that this was going to happen. South Africa was going to become independent. Okay, so they remortgaged their buildings, got the cash. I mean, people knew there was income coming in. There was no issues. The building is solid. So remortgaged the value of the building, took those monies and left the country. Because at that time, there was a window of people who wanted to do this, to take their money out of South Africa, were allowed to do this. The hindsight of the authorities at the time, they were too excited to get the country, and they didn't have the regulation or the foresight to see that, hey, hold on, there's things that we're going to need later on in the future. Let's try and ring fence these things. They just wanted to get rid of the white people. That was the thinking, all right? Let's just get rid of them. So a lot of these buildings stood empty. So the gangs found nobody was doing anything about these buildings. So they infiltrated 1, 2, 3. They infiltrated over 350 buildings now, Jamie, and derived an income from these buildings, because the city, by right, if landlords desert, the city is supposed to take over automatically, claim it, goes through government, and it becomes part of that structure. Didn't happen. So these guys are now so strong in that initiative. So for you to try and now go in, you need a military, something like what Trump is doing, in order to get rid of that. So when you look at Juarez, you'll see that Juarez had formed his own security company and was becoming successful on one by one rather than cluster, because he believed in that, you know what, we have to go back to basics. We can't do 10 buildings at a time. Let's do one building and finish and do the next and the next. So it was in the building that he was finishing, and that he was now sitting in the security system, that his security, in my opinion, because he had 5 protective orders on his life already at that stage, okay? And he went outside to take a call. You would think, if you're a high-profile target, and I'm sure your dad will tell you this with his military background, if you're a high-profile target, your security would follow you and surround you while you're taking this call outside, because obviously in the basement you can't hear anything, so you got to clear the building to get a signal. You would think that the security would have followed him. They didn't. And the spotter across the street saw that he was free, made the call, and these guys were there in seconds and gave it to him. 4 in the chest and 1 in the chin. And I mean, no one could survive that. He tried to run, but I think the blood loss at the time dropped him, and he died right there.
And so, is it right that South Africa has some of the highest rates for like murder, assassinations, and like that sort of crime? It's quite a high rate over there comparison to other places.
Yes, it's excessive. It's excessive. The gangs have now a culture. You know, it's not like how South Africa was in the past, where certain things were allowed during the apartheid time for retribution purposes, but supervised by the police. Okay? Now it is brutal. It's brutal. And what makes it worse is it's killing of its own people. It's not even like, are we going to leave Melbourne and we're going to go and kill the guys in Sydney? No, it's like Melbourne people in a section of Melbourne wanting the drug control in that area. So they kill not just the individuals involved. They like go to school sometimes, Jamie, and they kill the kids at school or on the way to school just to make a statement. I mean, what are you teaching that community?
So that must have some like serious reinforcement of like of stress, of trauma, and then that would kind of become an intergenerational trauma that pops up, right? Like
it is massive. This is why during COVID I studied mental health through the social work aspect first, before I went on to mental health proper. Okay, and South Africa is littered, Jamie, with a lot of mental health issues. You know, people say that the mental health was from or stemmed from the apartheid era. Okay, so let's look at it in context now, right? You say it came from the apartheid area. Okay, But then you would think it would affect the generation like myself and your dad. It shouldn't affect your generation, okay? But now you're finding the kids that are your generation are the ones actually carrying out those atrocities. I mean, the amount of young girls who get killed or violently sexually assaulted and then killed is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I mean, what is really sad is they sexually abused the girl. In itself, can you imagine the trauma of that alone, Jamie?
Yeah.
Then you violently kill the girl. Okay? No problem. She's dead now. Then you still take her out to an outland area and you set the body on fire. Seriously? I mean, there was this one model. This case sticks with me. It really hurts me a lot. A beautiful black girl, okay? Upcoming model in the Western Cape area. They had her left eye, they cut it out, the whole skin until you could see the skull, and pulled her whole eye out with that skin. She died not just from that, but from the shock of this being done to her by her own people. By her own people. The one case that really, really sits with me, and I'll send you the link for this one because I don't think you'll find it easily, was this University of Stellenbosch student. She was going out with a colored guy, okay? And this colored gang had picked on them, right? So there were 6 of them. On this particular evening, they picked her up with this guy. They totally destroyed this guy. He limped the scene, went to look for help, but the community wouldn't help him. And they took turns at this girl over an 8-hour period, Jamie. Right?
That's terrific.
And then after that, they found the big boulder and smashed this girl's skull. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Now, her father was a senior judge. Her mother was a senior magistrate. Her brother is disabled. Okay. I think it's one of those neurosyndrome type disabilities. So cognitively, he would never understand what had transpired. Her mother died of shock that this could happen to her daughter. Her father's cancer escalated. It killed him, Jamie. It killed him. There's only left the brother who's not there on how, yes, he's left with super millions, all right? How does he compute that? That this has happened?
Where'd they go? Yeah. Like, that would be so confusing, and his world would have been turned upside down to lose. And presumably it wouldn't have been all consecutively at the same time. It would have been, kind of, there would have been some gaps between that as well. And then to just have them suddenly disappear out of your life and then not be able to comprehend that. And having worked as like a support worker, I know how important routine is to some people that kind of require that for their daily life. Like, and all of that routine would have just been turned completely upside down. And yeah,
exactly. Now, if you think that one was bad, right? That's at the bottom of the chain. Let's go to the top of the chain now. Top of the chain. Extremely wealthy family. Son who doesn't get his way with his parents, right? Parents made their fortune in Australia, came back, developed a lot of the real estate around them, and had super money to retire on. But their son, who had just completed matriculation, wasn't having his way. So one night, Jamie, he trapped his mom and dad in bed in the most secure prime estate in the whole of South Africa. Okay. He went to the bedroom. He did the same to his brother. Okay. He went to the bedroom, did the same with his sister. Unfortunate for him, his sister survived. He sat, I think this guy watched too many CSI. He cleaned the place out of all what could have been contaminated on him. Made the call 4 hours later that there was a murder. Now, you can imagine, this estate is like a diamond in the whole of South Africa. Anyone who's a super millionaire to billionaire level stays in this estate. How could this have happened in this estate? His argument was maybe because he got up and they heard and they left. Impossible. This place was so CCTV'd, so secure. In the end, I must send you the link and the court transcript so you can see this. It was all about him, his greed. It's like one of those kids you take the PlayStation away from and becomes extremely angry and vengeful. And this guy was such a spoiled kid. He just didn't want to be told what to do. So he thought he's going to take out his entire family and earn the 250 million rand and properties so that he could inherit this and do as he pleased. But as an 18-year-old, tell me, Jamie, how are you going to manage such an enterprise? You do not have the skill sets to do that.
I didn't even know how to manage myself at 18.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. So he's currently serving a prison term. I think he's due for release in 2038. Okay. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you must know the famous Oscar Pistorius case.
Where he shot his girlfriend through the door, right? And
yeah.
Or
there's plenty Oscars in South Africa. I think the ones that really resonate with me are the ones that go when they totally devour a human, hang them up by their feet, Jamie, skin them. I mean, it is gross violence. There was something called a xenophobic attack here in South Africa, going back 3 years, in the months of June and July. This one Zimbabwean woman was very good with the community, and she was making money. She was legally in the country, but the others couldn't break into the network, what she was doing, selling of food. And if you look at what she was selling, it's probably some equivalent to 100 Australian dollars a day that she was making. Not a lot of money in South Africa if you make that kind of money. So they got a hold of her, Jamie. Okay. They tied her to a pole with the baby still on her back. And they set her on fire. And the community ring-fenced her that the authorities couldn't get in to save her until she was burnt and charred and the child's scream couldn't be heard no more. I mean, what is that, Jamie? What is that?
Yeah. That's just violence for the sake of violence, right? When I think about even the most grotesque gang violence that we have kind of in Australia and what you hear about in the West, and in other countries, like it's the worst it kind of gets is shooting other gang members, and occasionally like someone passing by might get shot as well. Like it's nothing on this level. Like lately, the big thing has been like firebombing other properties owned by like competing gangs and stuff like that. But like nothing on this level. Like how do you think that compares with what you've seen internationally, and how does that show up as in a session? Like, because for sure not everyone's in the gangs, right? So what does a normal person do, for lack of a better term, right? If you're not part of the gangs, how do you survive in a place like that?
You see, what I've learned is a lot of these mechanisms come from the apartheid era, because I understand the apartheid police were very brutal with the black population in extracting information or wanting certain things done, and people didn't adhere to it. I mean, you hear gruesome things of hot iron put up someone's backside, and stuff like that. Rapes were committed like that. So this brutality stems from an excessive hate. It's got to be an excessive hate. Even amongst the white South Africans, there is two types of white South Africans. There's the Afrikaner South African, and there's the white British South African. Okay? It's chalk and cheese, all right? Both progressive in their respective fields, but one very bitter. Okay? The Afrikaans is a bitter type person. He tends to also be very professional in what they do. They're good at what they do. Whether they choose, say, plowing, they become the best in that. They become the best farmers, the best construction, because they believe that's the ultimate goal. Even if he's got no piece of paper towards it, and he learnt it as a pass on, he makes sure, Jamie, that he studies that the best. Now, what you find in South Africa, a lot of the local population want the lifestyle, and they don't want to put in the time. I mean, even like what you and I are doing, right? What you and I are doing is not going to be fruition today, tomorrow. 3 to 5 years from now, Jamie, you and I will look back on this podcast, right? And say, that was the platform where we could speak completely freely with each other. At the moment, you can't say and I can't say on platforms that person's gay. You've got to use the correct terminology to describe that person as gay, right? I've got gay friends that I love to bits. I got this one particular one who's super awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah. There you go. And he's super OCD. When I say super OCD, I mean, like if you go to his house and sometimes when you get a drink and it goes on and it's got that water ring, he'll come and clean it. You can see you sitting there and you're still drinking your drink, but to clean it every time. So as the ice melting and water's dropping on that coaster, he'll come clean it. OCD to that level. But what people don't understand, and I'm saying this because I associate with everybody, okay? The etiquette amongst gay people, a lot of straight people could learn from, Jamie, in the sense that they're very house proud, one, okay? They always dress exceptional, and they're easily embarrassed if they don't come across properly the first time, all right? They always want to do that correctly, okay? If the straight guys were clever, they'd know, stick to a gay guy, he's got all the girlfriends, and you get all the chicks there. But hey, That's my opinion. Yeah, I'm not marketing for the straight guy, but I'm saying if you wise up and you change your line of thought, learn something and open up your mind and your eyes, and you'll see that these truths are spoken truths. You know what I'm saying? And it's the divergency of mixing and matching people that you learn that life is not black and white. It's never going to be black and white, as far as I'm concerned. Even on my kids' generation and my kids' kids' generation, I don't see them that this world is ever going to be black and white. There's always going to be some form of discrimination. People say to me, but you're forming a bias unnecessarily. I said, no. I said, even you yourself, when I'm having conversations with some of my acquaintances, I said, even you guys are racist. They said to me, why? I said, how can you define somebody as a racist without knowing that person? I got to have a conversation with somebody first, Jamie, before I assume that guy's racial. But why is he racial? Is he racial for the sake of being racial, or racial old school, or racial because something happened to him? So he's now demographically put you in that box. Because in South Africa, what happens is there's a lot of black on white violence. So it looks like the blacks are racist. The whites look at it from the other perspective, that a lot of blacks are infiltrating our areas. So the blacks say they're racist. And I'm saying, no, it's not. I would like to see this. I would really like to see this. If you, as black people, want to go into the so-called white areas, why don't you create your own? So that they see the transition that I also want to be in that place. I said, people don't see color when they see security. People see peace of mind, and people buy into peace of mind. I said, if you go to Dubai, okay, you'll see how there's such a culture difference there in its security aspect, okay? You don't know who's Arab, who's Russian, who's European, who's African, nothing, because people bought into the safety concept, and the government has sold the safety concept. I mean, when I went there, Jamie, I did a contract for the Roads Transport Authority. And they said to me, Lenton, I want you to test this theory, okay? It is a smart city. Go leave your phone anywhere in Dubai, anywhere. You'll find your phone in 1 hour. And nobody's going to take your phone. They'll return it to us. And you know what, Jamie? Dubai is like that. There is CCTV from the time like when I would leave my hotel, right? Into the taxi, into where I dropped off, into the shops that I went. So they could trace me and find where I left my phone because of the analytics in the data center within like 5 minutes, and say, that's where your phone is. They'd have the image of that person through his biometrics, okay? They know exactly who he is. They know his phone number. You know, they can call him and say, look, you got the phone, if he hasn't handed it in already. That's how fast, you know. But that, to me, doesn't give you the kind of peace of mind that you want. It takes away a certain freedom. If you know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what I was just about to say. I was like, sometimes when you're like looking at security, if you have to sacrifice freedom, are you really getting security? Because you're kind of trading some freedom to do what you want to do to do that. Like it, you know, and like that's a delicate balance. And I think it kind of, the pendulum should sway a bit. Like, you know, you do a little bit too much security, so you back it off, and you give more freedom, and then, you know, as the different governments come through, you kind of find where that sweet spot is. But yeah, that sounds very like almost Orwellian and like, yeah, very authoritarian. I mean, maybe it's becoming from like a kind of Western capitalist mindset, or it's like a little bit like the Wild West still in a way. But it's slowly changing here too. Like in my local council in Wollongong, kind of just south of Sydney, they're trialing like facial recognition cameras along like the beachfront, and I was actually riding my pushbike through there one time, and it must have had some kind of like speed sensor to detect if someone was like riding motorbikes or driving a car illegally along the beachfront on the bike path. And it flashed me because I ride pretty quick at night, and and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm in like some kind of communist country or something. Like it was just unreal. I'm always a fan of like kind of having freedom over security. I think I definitely appreciate both, but yeah, that like. And people often say the same about Japan as well. Like you could leave your laptop in a cafe and then come back 6 hours later, or a bar or whatever, and it would still be there. Or they'd have a note on the door or whatever in case they needed to shut. Like it's just, yeah, everything's got its pros and cons, right? Like,
but you know what? Central Africa, as a shithole country as it was, right? There wasn't major developments there since like the early 60s. Still lost in time, very lost in time, very rural. I felt so safe there. It was the most volatile because there was always someone killed every day by the rebels, okay? And especially on the road that we would travel, guaranteed someone was shot at or something. But it wasn't targeted towards us. It was always targeted towards like the opposition, okay? That on weekends, I would go into their markets, Jamie. Now, to give you context of the markets here in Central Africa is like, when people are coming out of football stadium?
Everyone's like pours out all at once, and they're like, ah, and then the two teams, if it wasn't a good game,
the markets are like that. The markets are like that. So can you imagine, as a non-French speaking person, to go into that environment, spend 2-3 hours in there, looking at everything, and still come out unscathed every single time? It's because there's spotters in that place, Jamie. If your phone was stolen, there's only one place it was going to. Your laptop was stolen, there's only one place it was going to. No one ever stole money. It's like an unwritten rule. Even if you go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, they'll steal your cell phone, they'll steal your laptop, steal your bag, steal your clothes, but they'll never steal your money. There's only so many money changers on the streets. Because if you need foreign currency, you don't go to the bank. The guys do the trading on the street.
Yeah.
And if you've been on the street and you did money changing, your money is marked. Okay? So they know already. So if someone takes your money and you bought it from, say, Steve, and you're now standing in front of Gary with Steve's money, Gary's going to call Steve and say, hey, this guy's got your money. How did this happen? And quickly, the system would eliminate you from the equation by itself, automatically like that. And when they take stuff from tourists, is not to take stuff because they're trying to generate a business from it. They're trying to be close personal protection. That's the long and short of it. If you've got one of us in your tribe when you guys are visiting, and you see nothing will go wrong with those tourists. Those tourists will pay these guys $100 a day, US a day, and you'll find by the end of the time maybe he's earned $1,000, but not a single thing was stolen because his income goes to the network. Gangland, but on a different level.
Yeah.
It's what's coming. Yeah.
So based on like all of that trauma and all of that stuff that's kind of like going on in the background in South Africa and in Central Africa, like if someone that was like a clinician, like a psychologist or like a naturopath or someone like actually in practice in session with someone from those places, like would there be any like social considerations about some of that trauma that they've gone through that they might not necessarily be able to like even comprehend, like just that level of kind of gang violence and civilian on civilian violence and police brutality, and you know the list kind of goes on. But like, what kind of social considerations are there to speak to someone from Africa that is from a country that has that?
It's a hidden thing in Africa. The only thing that forced the government to bring to light is the violence on women, because it's got excessive. It's got very excessive. The media tried to censor it over and over, but because of social media, it exploded. And the government was forced. But otherwise, mental health from an African perspective is, I'll chain you to a tree until you come right, or just shake it off, water off the duck's back, and don't think about it, and you'll come right. I mean, Jamie, that may have worked in your and my great-grandparents' time, because they didn't have the facilities when they came across to Australia or they came into Africa. You know what I mean? There was no NHS, there was no structures, there was no nothing.
It was not even SSRIs. Like,
exactly.
It's like,
you know, so you had to make do with what you had to make do. But again, even if you try to Google, don't listen to me. Try and Google and see mental health initiatives in South Africa. The last the government did was in 2018. 2018, Jamie. That's like 8 years ago. You know, there's nothing. Even in the Department of Health structure, go and look at all the initiatives for mental health. There's nothing. Look at the educational system for mental health in schools. There's nothing. Universities, there's nothing.
Is that a funding problem? Like, is it that the government over there doesn't have the money to fund it, like because of that corruption that you're talking about as well, and that kind of money getting diverted elsewhere in the system? Or is it just like it's just not on the agenda? Like they just don't think helping people with trauma is going to fix anything?
No, it's something's wrong with you. That's how it's looked at. Something's wrong with you, not with us. It must be with you. So then you're left to the devices. You don't even, now you must know the psychologists in South Africa are also another story. It's color-based. Okay? If you go to a psychologist who's black and is looking at a black person, he's going to look at the culture first, or the colored person's culture first, instead of looking and identifying the context of the problem, so that he can deal with it, and then maybe deal with the culture and those aspects later. But you judged first. And now because you judged, where do you go? Where do you go? You're now with this guy that's telling you things that you really grew up with and you knew. In the colored culture, violence is the number one thing. Okay? I come from that background, so I can talk to that background. Drugs, sex, and hate. Hate on levels that are just ugly. And not because you're a good person or a bad person, just hate in general. Okay? The Indian has a similar network. All right? The white looks at historically black, black looks at historically white. Not to say that people, we can make a business out of this, right? Let's fix our people. Let's get them right. There's over 9 institutions, serious institutions in South Africa. But what they're going to do, Jamie, you hinted a little bit the last time of what happened to yourself. What they do is they just institutionalize you and drug you. That's not dealing with the trauma. You and I know.
It's Band-Aid culture.
Exactly. So you and I know from the little reading that we do and the lot of research that we go through is that trauma scales down with time. It's not an overnight thing. It's constant work. You never forget it. It's always there. And there's always an ignition switch somewhere waiting to revisit that. And you got to try and make sure that you're strong enough emotionally to deal with that trigger switch. That's what counseling does for you. It doesn't eradicate the problem. It never will eradicate the problem. People always think that, yeah, okay, no, I'll go see a psychologist or I'll go see a psychiatrist and I'll be okay after that. No, he's going to give you tools. And if you don't work with those tools, it's neither here nor there. You know? And the only reason he's got those tools is because of his training through academia. But if you're really interested in resolving some of your own issues, this is why, like, I give people the link to the Black Dog Institute, the American Society of Psychiatry and Psychology, so that people can read up. Then people say, look, I got no time to read. Okay, I'll give you links to YouTube. All right. Yeah, but that happened to him. It doesn't happen to me. But you're not seeing the similarities here. You're in that same situation, whether your boyfriend dumped you, whether you got fired from a job, whether you got into an accident, whether you got robbed, whether you were physically abused, the structure is the same when it starts. Okay.
Yeah, it's all cortisol response, right? Not all, but it's cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, norepinephrine, and all of these systems all firing and overwhelming the brain and the body.
I mean, what people don't understand is your first defense in counseling is doing like what you and I do. Let's talk about this. Okay. Now, in that talking, over a period of sessions, you're going to get to know where the pinch points are and where the catalysts were for some of these signals that caused this overwhelming trauma within you. And you, as the responsible person, now got to figure out the roadmap on how you're going to deal with certain pinch points that don't cause triggers for those points and the others. And this is where people think on self-curation in the mental health space. It works. It doesn't. You've got to communicate with people. Whether you're embarrassed that you've seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you need to get over that in order to be a sane person in the society that you exist. Now remember, the society that in which you exist is not completely black and white. It's gray all over. And there's plenty of things that's going to annoy you on a daily basis, as we both know. Okay? And you just one piece of this puzzle. And you've got to learn how to coexist, because the world don't stop, Jamie. If you and I get injured today in a plane crash, the world didn't stop. Oh, that's Jamie and Lenton. Hey, it must have been really bad for them. We got to pick up our lives from that. Say we've had other traumas, but now the plane crash trauma comes to the forefront. And now we got to deal with how this shock, how it's shaken me, how abused my body feels, how traumatized I can't sleep because I keep re-seeing these visions of this accident. Do you know what I mean? So
I do.
It's not an easy field that we've entered in, because I was put in touch with some central mental health institutions in the UK that I wanted to align with, right? And they were focusing mainly on the military, because those guys have seen some super stuff and also got dismembered because of IEDs and different things. And they've seen a lot of Gaza type deaths, and they can't adjust to normal life. because of that. And I said to the guys, what has been your success rate to date from the Gulf War up to now? Okay, because by entering this field, you can't just look at society today. Mental health didn't start today, started long, and plenty things affect people's mental health on a daily basis, right? And a lot of, like Steve's, your grandparents may have been harder on Steve when he was growing up. And Steve may not have been as hard on you and your sister in your time, and you may be softer on your guys' kids coming forward. You know what I mean? Because the development mentally is different in 200 years stretch to where it is now. But the trauma effect is still the same. Whether you came and you were isolated as a parent when you first landed on the beach, you feel that isolation away from your family in a foreign place, in a country, and you're stuck. And people didn't see that. Because if you looked at our grandparents and great-grandparents, their first form of defense was violence on a child, to discipline a child. That doesn't work. Here in Africa today, in South Africa, if a child is born with a mental disability, they send him to the rural area village. He'll have a dog collar and a chain to a tree. In this day and age, you can't do that. But they still do. They still do. How is that? Now, look at this dog syndrome, okay? It's like the Vietnamese did with the cows. They put this cow on a leash, right? And this cow goes in a circle around the tree. And then after 7 days, they take off this leash. This cow will never go further than that circle. So now think that's an animal that you're doing that to. What of a human being? Because even if you take his leash off, he's scared to leave that environment. He's scared to get in a car because his form of security just becomes that. He doesn't want to go to school now. He doesn't want to talk to nobody. It's all these things that we've got to try and get into communities. That's what I wanted to say to you, is the communities. I don't know the African Asian communities in Australia and how they've impacted, because the lifestyle is very different. Yes, it's similar in terms of it's in the south of the equator, so the climates are quasi the same, but the environments are totally different. The Australian environment is extremely different. The culture is different. Racism would be at a different level on that, because what I noticed also, having studied through the institute, the Black Dog Institute, is that culturally, some of the Australians don't like, say, the Sydney people, don't like the Northerners or the Perth people.
New South Wales and Queensland. Even in the footy, like we've got a whole footy match just of New South Wales versus Queensland, like, and then it's like a mismatch in humor. In like, I mean, Queensland, I describe it as like the Texas of Australia. It's just like it's a bit like the Wild West up there. But yeah, I totally see what you mean with like that. Kind of even within Australia, like there's differences between the different people. And then you've got WA, and they want to separate from the national government that we have and be their own kind of country. And yeah, it's interesting. And so, what, if you don't mind me asking, what were some of the findings that you did with the Black Dog Institute? What were you doing with them? Because I've heard of them. They do it's for depression and mental health, right? The Black Dog Institute. So
so the backbone of the Black Dog Institute was focused on depression. Okay. Gordon was the founder of the Black Dog Institute. Okay. You must read his story. You must read his story. And it took him over 25 years to understand what they were doing with depressive patients was completely wrong. Completely wrong. He was the first one to admit that he set up the Black Dog Institute to specifically deal with depression from a chemistry perspective. Okay, what the pharmaceuticals said, that's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to counsel you, seeing your moods and monitor you through that form so that you don't even get to the suicidal form. Then he had one patient who was 42 years old. Okay, that patient was depressive ever since she was 16 years old. Okay, and they criticized the specialist who was seeing her. He took her off all the medication, completely off all the medication. Okay,
tapered off, or just straight away to zero?
Yeah. It made her go cold turkey. Okay, from day one, he took her off all her medication for 14 days. Right, he gave her a prescriptive food diet, veg, fruits, meat diet that changed her body collagen, if I can call that. All right, that was causing the depressive triggers in her. 6 months after that, she became the #1 bookseller. She started reclaiming her life. So he had all this data that he shared with Gordon. And Gordon couldn't believe this. So the Black Dog Institute started piloting the alternative to just prescriptive. Okay? And
pills before pills, sort of thing.
Yeah. So what they were understanding is that where there is the violent depressive, start it that way, but don't continue it until the end. Start it until cognitively this person adjusts, change the habits and the diets of this person in that environment that they're in. If the house and environment is not conducive where that person is, get them out of it and get them into a job that challenges their intellectual. That never
so that's
allows
where you
them.
that's where you see the 5 pillars of psychology kind of pop up, right? That's where you're looking at like purpose and fulfillment, and how's the family life going? Have they got a social group? Have they got some kind of thing that they're working towards? Do they do exercise, diet, and looking at it holistically rather than just a chemical imbalance? And I do have some gripes with the chemical imbalance idea of mental health. There's someone who was like, I was prescribed on 5 or 6 different medications at one stage for my mental health, and all of them were making me worse, or at least numb to feeling anything at all, which in turn made me feel worse. And so after a while, I did this genetic testing, and obviously not everyone can do that genetic testing, but I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And most of these drugs that I'd been prescribed for mental health, I was a hypermetabolizer or a hypometabolizer for, and there was all of these contraindications in my genetics for these tablets that I've been prescribed. And I've been telling these doctors for ages about, it's not working, I feel really bad, I feel awful, and nothing was really getting done. And, and then if it was, they'd, okay, well, we'll try this pill instead. And, never really looking at the gut. And they're saying these days that like 50 to 80% of our serotonin comes from the bacteria in our gut, right? That's over half in some cases if you've got a healthy gut microbiome. And that's not to say that all of that serotonin obviously gets to the brain. Some of it acts in the periphery in the body and as signaling molecules as well. But it's such a huge portion of mental health is your food and your nutrition, as they kind of found out. And so did that kind of spark nutritional psychiatry and psychology lifestyle medicine in Australia, and how did that go elsewhere from that?
No, because I got look, our son is autistic, okay? And he's all over the place, okay? But the one thing, if he likes something, he's focused. Can't move him left to right or that, okay? So the school pushed for Ritalin. We were rebels. We refused. We totally refused. Because if you're going to put him on Ritalin, you're putting him on Ritalin for life. So we said, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to change, okay? So what we found is that he had a high intake of sugar. And sugar was a catalyst, okay? And as much as we were trying to cut out his sugar, he wouldn't listen, all right? So one day at school, a bionutritionist came in and was just talking about the very different forms of sugar and how it impacts your body, okay? And your mental health and all your frustrations, because you fly off the handle a lot easier. And you must know, he's now taller than me, Jamie. And I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2". And he's taller than me.
Yeah, so you're not small. Like that's
exactly.
Pretty decent.
Exactly. Yeah. So he then, this was last year October, huh? Last year October. He just cut out all starch himself after this lecture, all sugar.
Is that because starch is kind of metabolizing in the gut into sugar after like the bacteria have eaten it? Yeah, okay.
So he totally went off that. Only thing that he was eating was fruit, natural sugars. He lost, I would say, over 25 kilos over a 2-month period. In that, he took up gymming, all right? He took up physical sports. There's some days, Jamie, you don't eat at all. But the shift and the adjustment is beyond text, if you know what I'm saying.
So was he doing like functioning off of ketones? Like, so because he was running more on a fasted state, he was essentially kind of in ketosis. Is that what you kind of put it down to as being the benefit?
I would think a lot ketones, I would think at that point. But like now, he's in a total new space, okay? I mean, his brother can have a bowl of cereal, okay? Preferably Pro Nutro. Pro Nutro is a high protein cereal, okay? That's South African. Or any form of protein he'd have in the day, okay? And he would just drink water consistently throughout the day and didn't eat anything. That was his brother, okay? To the point that he went on for 6 years just living on a cereal, late afternoon, noodles. That's it. Nothing else. Now, you and I both know that noodles has good and bad in it, okay? Especially the dried noodles is an issue. The fresh made noodles is a different ballgame.
Yeah.
So we were more worried about what was going in and the deficiencies that could come out of the noodles. But again, he did the migration on his own based on an assessment when he went to stay with a friend who wasn't into any of his stuff. So he had to eat a breakfast that he never ate before or rejected that we tried to do. It was like bacon and egg was foreign to him. Didn't want that, right? Toast was a welcome sight if the cereal ran short. But that's as far as it went. Didn't want butter on it, didn't want jam, just dry toast. weird kid. Okay. But as he got more and more exposed on sleepovers, he noticed the trends in different people's houses. Because when his sleepovers come to our house, we treat them differently in the sense that whatever we eat him, they eat. Okay?
Yeah.
Unless it's somebody who is anemic or got allergies or something, we cater for all that because we've got friends and family that are in that space. So we know how to manage. We won't just impose anything that's going to be a catalyst to that child because ultimately it becomes my headache if that happens. So through that interaction and development, we have noticed that the mental health has changed. The lippiness still stays, obviously. That one's going to be a long one to deal with, but the basis of nutrition is changing. Okay. This is the one thing that I can only give the government credit for when I was doing the schools. The government at the time, it stopped now, I don't know why, maybe because of COVID, used to give primary school kids 1 meal a day. And that meal was basically sardines, either with maize meal, pasta, or with rice. Okay? And that nutrition was fantastic because if you went, Jamie, to like say a primary school in the most remotest of areas, black schools I'm talking about, you'd find the most educated black kids there because the omegas, the proteins, fantastic. If you even went to the outlining in the city areas of the most horrible townships that you could find, because of that nutrition, those kids academically were performing, no problem. Now go to one that hasn't got those things of that nutritious meal, different order. I mean, people think that giving someone just a peanut butter sandwich with a bottle of juice, high sugar juice, is the solution. And these days, they're not using high sugar juice, they're using improvised sugar, which in my opinion is worse because it plays with the hormones on your body. And it also plays with your insulin levels in your body because it's false sugar and doing a lot of false triggering makes you tired unnecessarily and hypes you up unnecessarily. So this is why you have a lot of hyper kids and non-hyper kids. I mean, in South Africa, big thing is no more, they call it sugarless sweets. What is a sugarless sweet, Jamie? Jamie, if I want a sweet, I want it full fat. That's it. Give it to me full fat. You know, let me take it in and have the
sugarless sweet is nothing. It's just air in a wrapper.
Exactly. So I'd rather have this fat sugar-based block of fudge that had super butter in it, super sugar in it, and I can go have a black coffee to wash it down, but know that I now know how to manage that 13 teaspoons of sugar in that block in my body so that I can regulate my meals throughout the day. Because if I have that at breakfast, I know I'm not going to eat anything until 3 o'clock because I need to burn off and regulate that sugar. All right. But if you give me artificial sugar in the day, the artificial sugar doesn't work in my system. It triggers false belief in my system. And what's it doing for me mentally? Because I don't know about you, but I tried this on myself first. I went on a week of artificial sugars, right, in the form of Coke Zero. I got nauseous. I got headaches. I got serious headaches, like migraine type headaches. I knew where it was coming from. So that is a cutout. I'll still have a glass of Coke Zero in a social environment where water is limited and you're at a function or something and people are serving that. I'm not going to drink it in one gulp. It's going to take long, but I probably will leave it at half a glass by the time I'm finished the function. I'll make sure I've got enough food that I've eaten to balance that out. That sort of a thing.
Yeah.
But society, I don't know the unemployment situation in Australia. I don't go into those kind of stats because my concentration is Africa. Africa doesn't look at mental health the same way Australia does, the same way UK and Europe does, the US and Canada does. This is why I'm learning from institutions. When I had applied to your government for a grant, because they give grants for mental health in Africa, and there were certain funds that they said I could go to. And they said to me, Lenton, we've got 30,000 mental health facilities in Sydney and nationally, okay? So collectively, we've got 30,000. You'd be lucky if 3,000 come up every year to collect the grant. I was astounded by that the government is giving that stat. The government has a budget, your guys' government has a budget for mental health, but people are still not coming up to use that budget to improve the lives within their own households or within the communities. And they've sent me research to look at, but I was astounded that such a forwarding community, because one thing Australia has been very strong on is immigration. Anti-immigration has been a big thing for all the governments that I've met of Australia, So I just looked at it from just that context. Okay. So it comes to that syndrome thing again, where the foreigners are taking our jobs. And you think to yourself, no, the foreigners are not taking your jobs. Why do you think the foreigners are taking your jobs? Because you're stuck in this community. I mean, you're stuck somewhere in the Billabong. The guy's taking the job in Sydney. How is that affecting you? He's not affecting you at all. If with anything, he's paying more tax to make sure that your lifestyle out there is still protected by the government funds that go to that facility in that place. You know what I mean? So it's mental health, I find, in our societies today is a chess game. Good people are using bad people to drive a narrative. The bad people are pushing the good people for their end of the narrative. And then there's the bad people and the bad people, as in the gangs in the communities, driving their own agendas because they know the good people don't want to get into here in any case. As far as they are concerned, you stay in this squalor, we'll keep you supplied and satisfied in this squalor, but just stay away from us. And it's got to be a mind shift at some stage. There has to be. Because if you don't, it's easier today to walk into the shop or walk into the street and go buy a gun. One. It's easier today online or any street in any alley to find a drug dealer. Unlike before, you needed to go to a certain point to get a drug dealer. Today,
and a lot of people are using Snapchat and Signal and like all of these like online apps, and now like it's facilitated by that.
And people are so well read today that they read ingredients themselves and they go get over-the-counter medication and make it at home. You can't nail him for that because it's level 1, which is non-prescriptive. Okay, level 3 and upwards is prescriptive, but level 1 and 2 is over the counter. As codeine is a big thing in South Africa. I don't know about your part of the world. What they've found is the youngsters have found that if they mix a brandy or a cane type of alcohol, like vodka or gin, with a cough mixture. Okay, that's got codeine in it. Now, codeine exists with only certain chemicals. It gives them a rush. So they mix, so they go into the shops and they buy cough mixture. Now, the government did its part in the sense that it limited cough mixture to 3 per person. Jamie, you use your head. There's 10 of us. Yeah. We're going to go into this pharmacy. We're going to get 3. We're going to go into the next pharmacy. We're going to get 3. By the time we've finished, we've correlated 100 bottles of this cough mixture.
There's also multiple different forms of cough mixture as well, right? Like over here, it's quite a difficult, it's not impossible. I think you can get it with a prescription, the codeine cough syrup, but there's a cough syrup that's available over the counter. You don't need a prescription or anything, that's got dextromorphan in it. And at certain dosages, that becomes a psychedelic compound. And like, it's just like, and it's just available over the counter. I mean, I'm not saying it's an enjoyable trip or anything. It's it leads to a lot of nausea and vomiting and stuff like that. At least reportedly online. I've never tried, but it's, and then you hear a lot. One of the bands that kind of came into place similar to that over here was with pseudoephedrine. So with cold and flu medicine for decongesting your nose. It's basically the precursor to making speed, and so they put bans on that, and so you have to show your license or your photo ID card in order to get it, and you can only get 1 box. And I had a really bad cold one time, and I said, I need another box, and I knew the pharmacist quite well in that pharmacy, and I said, and I need another box. She's just like, seriously, I can't give it to you because you've hit the limit. And I was like, I only had 1 box though. She's like, yeah, like there's nothing I can do.
Because also what they do as an alcohol, you guys sell methylated spirits in your part of the world.
Yeah.
So what these guys do is they get a loaf of bread, not the sliced, the standard loaf of bread. They hollow about, I'd say, 1 inch into it, and they put a hole at the bottom. They pour the methylated spirits in, and it comes out clear at the bottom. Alcohol, 120% pure. They do the same now with petrol. You can't stop people buying petrol. So they do the same thing. They buy the loaves of bread, they distill it twice through the same method. Pure alcohol comes out at the end of that, and it's there. And it's a high. And then they mix it. Now you must know, this is 100% pure when it comes out. And 100% pure, your body's not built for 100% pure.
Yeah, but alcohol, we're built for like a few percent, like a fruit that's naturally fermented on the floor of the forest. Like,
I think the highest on wines and beers is about 12. Only when it gets to like sherries and cognacs, you go to like maybe 50 or 60%, and it's capped at that. This at 100%, can you imagine what it's doing to your system? And this is now being sold at pubs, clubs, where all the kids go. And it's mixed on top of that with whatever they get from over the counter. And they put it like some form of, what's this? Like a spritzer.
Yeah.
And these kids go and decant this thing as they go in, because you come to like this function, you pay an entrance fee, and this spritzer is part of your fee, right? So that what they do is that when this spritzer is finished, your taste and thirst for alcohol is so high now, you end up spending more and more money in the venue on the actual costed alcohol over and above what was free. Becomes a trap, becomes an addiction. And when it becomes an addiction, it becomes an issue in that house. And it becomes society's problem. And unlike your society, my society is doing nothing about it. I know with time, I may become a person of target because of this, because I'm going against industry giants in the sense that they need to take responsibility for some of these actions because they can, but there is always rogue outlets that will bend the system. We all know that. Those you can't control because it'll be a licensed institution, but bulk wholesale to rogue traders. And those rogue traders will stay existing and stay alive. China is very big in this country. I don't know about your part of the world.
Getting there.
And the Chinese have been arrested numerous times for doing drug warehouses, drug equipment they brought in to manufacture their own. I mean, LSD, they in a prime, hot residential, top residential area where only millionaires live. These guys ran a drug factory there. And they were sending it out in suites and selling those suites to kids at schools in the area. The churches, top churches, where you have like afternoon classes or where you leave your kids for after school and you pick them up when you're coming home, those guys were spiking the energy drinks with the same things. So it's caused an issue. Even in my own house right now, one of my sons is caused an issue with a girl 2 years younger than him, but said stuff on social media that's made an impact. And I said to him, yesterday his mom and I sat him down and said, you can't do that. If you're having a face-to-face conversation in a heated moment, it's perfect. But when you put it in black and white, it's played over. And now in this case, her mother picked it up. And then her mother called it out. And then it was no more at that level. It was now beyond the cellular level. It's now gone explosive. And I said to him, you see how you're going to set back yourself and how you're going to set back the environment in which you were doing sleepovers with now? Because now the mothers of those other kids hear about this story, which we can't control because you put it out there and all those messages are already screenshot and forwarded to God knows where. And I said, then it becomes a mental issue for you. Yet you started this in a joke and in a hype because everybody was doing it. And you didn't think of this girl and her situation. And now it's a problem. So the long and short of it, I see, Jamie, is that our roles are pebbles in the ocean, but how many pebbles can we correlate in this ocean to make a difference? For me, I'm looking, if I can just make one, I've made a difference and I've made an impact. Because I don't know the strength of that one that's going to make a difference on another set, and so on and so on and so on. So
we've also got the 6 degrees of separation as well, right? Like you can get in contact with anyone through 6. Yeah.
Just by me being on this podcast with you, I don't know the platforms you're going to share it with or where we can use it to catalyst and make the awareness of mental health. May define certain places that you and I haven't gone to, may ignite certain people in certain areas to do something about it that are more outlandish and outreach than you and I, and have better resources than you and I. But the conversation needed to start. And I'm happy to say that you and I have started this conversation. And it shouldn't be a first, it should be one of many conversations over time. And we see our own growth and impacts that we've had with the different layers of communities or individuals that we've impacted on, and see, are we still on the road? Because I believe I must be checked. Because remember, as you become more and more confident in what you're doing, you think you become an authority on it and you get big-headed. You can't, because there'll always be somebody who is more intuitive I mean, I go back to the Black Dog Institute. Yeah, Gordon thought he was doing the best thing since bubblegum. And then 30 years on, he find that what he was doing was totally wrong. And that there was a better way to doing this, a far cheaper, less intensive way of doing it. I know people say, no, social media, use social media. Yes, social media works to a certain point. But what your government's done, I think, is a bittersweet pill, in the sense that it's kept who can go online and who can't go online. I think that's a good thing.
With the social media ban?
Yes. So I followed your Australian suicide rates and deaths. Like if you look at 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes gives you a lot of insight on a lot of families that lost children to social media. And I thought to myself, that's bad. The UK's got the same thing. It's very high. And the one guy that shot himself, this was streamed. It was a 16-year-old who coached him onto doing this thing, and he was playing Russian roulette, right? And on the fourth bullet, he blew his brains out. Now, this guy didn't cut the feed. He carried on the feed even when the parents came in the room and found their child like this. This feed carried on right through until first responders came, took his body. I mean, what gratification could that have been? Seriously, you caused a loss of life to that family. That child will never see the light of day again. That family's trauma is for life. Yes, they've tried now to set up a fund, but my question to you on this platform is, do we have to keep learning by mistakes? Do we have to keep seeing the wrong? We know the wrong exists. We see it every day. All right?
Yeah.
You just go into a coffee shop. It's across all levels. You see the impatient, wealthy person in the coffee queue who needs his coffee now, and he can't understand why he's still waiting. Jamie and Lenton are ahead of him and are slow in ordering. You can't understand that. But it's at those micro levels that these things kick off. And some people can die in the street just because of arguing over a parking. You can get shot at, you know? I had to teach Adele, if you see the taxis, we call them combis, it's those mini buses that carry like 20 people in, okay? They're the worst drivers ever you could get in South Africa, right? They will cut you, they will do everything to annoy the shit out of you on the road, okay? Yeah. But because I rode a motorbike in my younger years, I have the mentality that I was taught when I was going through motorbike riding lessons. The guy said to me, in order for you to survive, Lenton, on a motorbike, just think everyone else on the road is an idiot and you're the most cleverest person there. If you don't think like that, you're going to be the first idiot to die. So I had to teach her the same thing. Just consider those taxis as idiots and you're the most sane person. Ignore what they're doing and you're okay. And she's totally transformed from that now. She expects it.
You asked, so do we have to keep on doing the wrong thing in order to learn? What is your view of, because like when you've got so many different things in kind of South Africa and things are done differently in Central Africa, and you've kind of touched on that as well, with a system that's kind of like got so many different aspects of difficulty and trauma and like lots of different layers to it, like where do you start with that? And like obviously it's not all on you or all on me or all on any one company, but like where do you go from there, and like how do you build up from that?
So you see, I've sent up what's called the talk sanctuary, like I've showed you, right? So mine is an advocacy, all right? So I'm trying to document the data and the motivation for this to enter schools at primary level. Because if it enters schools at primary level as a subject and goes on to school in senior level, it equips society with the basics. All right.
Yeah.
That is my objective of setting up my institution, is to say, you know what, people, if you teach people mental health at a very early age, it becomes locked. You don't wait for an incident to happen to then start teaching mental health. No. Teach it, because each of us today in our own houses, own families, have either an alcoholic, an addiction person, an OCD person, an ADHD person, you name it. We all got one of those. So we all got our mental health. It's just which buttons that mental health person pushes in the house to make or break your day. So if we can understand, oh, okay, in the South African context, oh, that's why Gogo, meaning Granny, is like that, because she's not okay. We mustn't do this or this, because then Gogo is going to carry on like that. So if we can understand and start developing those narratives now and deliver a curriculum for that. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm setting up an appointment with the Deputy Minister of Higher Education for next month. Okay? I've designed a curriculum that I think from an because you can't just design a curriculum based on global, because global doesn't impact the way that people think and live in South Africa. So you've got to deal with the context here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is why I tell people, don't tell me what it works in Europe and work here. It won't, because you got white people at a different level. We started school at a different level. So you can't say you must come here when the guy started school here at 10 and you started school at 6. How is he going to know all these things? He hasn't got the tools. So you've got to now understand it from this level. So what I did is I created a framework, because having worked for Cocter, I know how you've got to position it for government in order for government to at least then take it to cabinet and have cabinet go through it to say, okay, this can work, but maybe tweak this, change that, and bring it back before it's rolled out. So the first steps I want to do is make sure that I take it to her. She goes through it. She sees the hills and the troughs in it, and then says, maybe you need to do this and this and this. Come back, but keep that as the blueprint. Make the changes that she's suggested, and then submit it and see. But also what I've done to that paper, I've linked it to several AIs that are globally linked to education and mental health, right? And I've used the South African narratives data that I've managed to collect to say, right, these are the issues in the media. These are the issues in social media. How do we deal with these on a national level in the framework? First, for children at primary level, and then children at secondary level, okay? By the time you get to tertiary education, you would have known how to deal with mental health, because you had that learning, like how you learn history, geography, English, maths at school level. So that is my way, Jamie, of trying to do that, rather than trying to form a group in a community to deal with the community. I think I'll lose. I think I'll lose.
Out of curiosity, in the South African context, like, do a lot of people go to school? Is it like in Australia where, like, you know, pretty much everyone goes to school? There's very few homeschooled people, or people that don't go to school at all, or is it? What's the kind of ratios look like?
Schooling is compulsory. Okay.
Okay.
It's It's non-paid for low-income earners. Okay, you don't need to pay a cent. So there's no reason for you not to send a child to school. No reason whatsoever. But
my next question was going to be, does in school the people that go and like can afford to go and that is there a physical health component? Because like it's if they don't even have the physical health component, you know, it seems nebulous to get into mental health as well as that. So like what does the curriculum kind of look like generally at the moment?
No, there is a health component with schools. There is the isolated, like you'd have in most schools globally, where there is a section of students that families are going through a hard time, okay? And they always try and canvas that as students to make sure, because they don't want to be seen as the poor kid in class and things like that. But there is a mix of that. By and large, that community is protected by the state and the system, because they're saying, look, we're giving you the platform irrespective, and that community still gives some form of sustenance to those children. So there's no need for you not to go to school and get an education. There's every reason for you to go to school and get an education. But what the system has done now is designed to say that, but we also want entrepreneurs, so you don't need to go to school. And I think that's wrong, because at least if you've got primary education, okay, you can read and write and comprehend right from wrong, it's a good place to be. All right. Some of the bright geniuses in this world, yes, didn't go to high school because they learnt off society and systems and created some of the best systems that we have in the world. But in South Africa, in Africa, some of those things that you need to create, you need to go a lot higher than primary school in order to do that. Even for me to go on an EDX platform and learn coding, Python, Ruby, whichever one, I still need basic understanding of the concept before I can learn how to do that. If I don't know how to use a laptop, then how am I going to learn how to use coding? So you've got to learn the basic tools first. And this is where I'm trying to position myself and my enterprise in, as in, people, we all know mental health, but you don't know mental health. Your concept of mental health is, that guy's mad, he's not okay in his head. My concept of mental health, you lost your rag too easily on your colleague, would just move your cup of coffee. You've got serious mental health issues if that happened to you. You know? You just move your coffee because you're going to spill it on his laptop. Don't you see the rationale in that? So there's underlying issues in people. But if we, maybe it's a challenge for you to take the baton on for your side of the water, is go to the government and say, but why can't we create something at grassroots level? Why does it only have to be at tertiary level to deal with society's rot? Because all of us have grown up, have seen the bum on the street, the beggar on the street, the homeless guy on the street, the auntie or uncle who lost a rag at a wedding, at a party, the kids that are swearing on the beach, the ugly fighting on drunken brawls because of things that were said in the past and all this kind of thing. It's there. The evidence and the data is there. Doesn't need an idiot to miss it, right? But if I'm working one-on-one, right, how long that's going to take me, Jamie?
Well, there's 27 million people, so in Australia at least. So.
I could never do that. But if I create a system for you and you buy into that system and you work hand in hand with corporate partners, because the corporate partners have a high interest in this. Because if the bright sparks are mentally sharp after this, they've got replenishment in their institutions.
It's expensive to train people too.
Yeah. So this is why, like, when I went to Growth Point and I asked Growth Point about this, Growth Point told me that I had missed the funding for this year's initiative, but it's an initiative that they're interested in because it's the blueprint for them. Because as people retire and replenish from their place, they look for undergraduates who've got key skills. They've also now learned to shift from just academic, but to look for soft skills. And soft skills are, hey, Jamie's so popular in the office. You find if you're in an office with serious statisticians, they don't talk, they don't laugh. They're all just serious looking at their computers and data sheets and that kind of thing. But if you've got somebody who's light, who's human, but equally qualified in that space, it breaks the tension in the office. And people then flourish and develop more those offices. So they also looked at my initiative to say, you know what, you got something here, we're interested in it, but take it to the next level. So I said, okay. So that's where I'm at. And I can only do that by learning from your experience and the other podcast platforms that I'm going to go to, because each country is different.
Yeah.
I'm also targeting war zones like Sudan, Gaza. Imagine what those people are going to be coming out of.
Yeah. This is also a time where we have 4K video access to a lot of these different wars and conflicts that are happening at the moment. Like we've never had that before. And so like that in of itself, like even for the people that aren't there in situ in the conflict, on the other side of the world, people are still getting affected by seeing it every day. Like that's, that's pretty impactful. And it does drive change, whether that's good change or bad change. A lot of people could argue both ways. But so you've kind of come from this place of being in South Africa, Central Africa, England, and it sounds like Australia as well. What have you learned so far about translating trauma frameworks across different cultures? Are there things that work better in some places versus in other places, or is there methods that work regardless of where someone is from or what cultural or religious background they might have? Like, what have you kind of come across?
What I've noticed from America, UK, Australia, first form of defense has been medicative. First form, okay? Drug and drowse, and let's work from there, okay? Very little research and data on background of the individual. No, he's always been a nuisance. He's always been a trouble child. So they've taken that context. They've not analyzed why is that child a trouble child. Okay. So what I've seen is that the blame has shifted mainly on mainstream media, mainstream social media. Okay. They've now not looked at that. The parents are no more there because the parents are working harder now, okay, to maintain a lifestyle that they didn't have to do in like their parents' time. Remember, in the parents' time, the best that we had was a TV, and the TV only came on a certain time of the day, and that was it. And we had one phone in the house, and that was in the corner somewhere, and that was it, right? So it didn't follow you. Now you've got the social life, the social gatherings, the mixing of minds, and the money. The money. People those days wanted to travel the most and did it conservatively. Road trips were famous those days, right? Airplanes were reserved like for super rich people. Today, airplanes are not reserved for super rich people. Today, Jamie, you earn, say, and you've got savings of 20,000 Australian dollars. That's a good trip around the world. You know what I mean? A lot of people would envy a trip like that you could do today. But what they don't realize is that you're not going to stay in the blue chip hotels. You're going to do it in a lot of B&Bs and places like that so that you can just put your head to rest and bunk off cheap food, and you're seeing a lot of the country. But you're not really seeing the lifestyle. But you're posting on social media, and I'm thinking, shit, how come I can't do what Jamie's doing? But you don't get the context to what Jamie is doing. So you're creating your own narrative in your head, and you're killing yourself with this pressure unnecessarily. And that's what I'm seeing, because I follow the UK almost daily. And I see what's going on because of the NHS and because I had network with the NHS. So I still can get data directly from the NHS. I see that they're not dealing with people with real mental health problems. They're still not. Some of the killings that happened this year, okay, were caused by patients that had mental health in their own homes. I mean, 2 families so far that have come to light in the media in the UK. The son was told by the NHS and was told by the police, no, he's okay. He's just, he's a child. He has his tantrums. But he killed his mom, he killed his aunt, he killed his sister, and was coming out now to kill his father. And his father had basic combat skills, so managed to save himself. And then pin his son down and get his son arrested. But they also were black people, and they believed that maybe it was something in their past that caused that. So you see what I'm saying? So they still not taking it to heart. There's still more people dying, Jamie. Even like you and I have been on this podcast. They're still not taking it seriously because it's not a cancer. It's not high blood pressure. It's not a diabetes. Until it's escalated to those kind of levels where the money can come in and the pharmaceuticals can back, say, a study on mental health properly, like how they put money into cancers, it's never going to be a serious thing. It will never be a serious thing.
That's the kind of shame with the medical industry where it's at, is it's like it kind of profits off of people being unwell rather than people being well. It cares less about patient outcome and more about having that patient return over and over again. And I can say that I experienced that myself. Like I was on 5 of 6 different medications and I didn't feel any better for it. And no one really looked at the mechanism of action as to what was really going on behind. I genuinely had to figure it out for myself. And that's not to say that like practitioners weren't there that could have helped, but it was, under bulk billing, like it's quite difficult to find a nutritionist. And if you're lucky, if you can even get one, you still need to have like an upfront fee to pay for the nutritionist or all of these different modalities, psychiatry, psychology. And what it turned out is, at least in my case, I can't speak for everybody with mental health, but for me, it was something as simple as taking magnesium, taking krill oil for when I'm in a heightened state, taking zinc so that I have like healthier skin, and in my zinc there's vitamin C, a different form of magnesium, taking electrolytes and making sure that's all balanced out. Because what happens in my particular case, again, I can't speak for everybody, but I overhydrate and then I lose a whole bunch of electrolytes, one of them being mostly magnesium. And then from that, there's all sorts of other cascades of effects with everything trying to balance out with that. And so that leads to a change in sodium levels. And then sodium's like one of our main kind of messaging things, right? It's in the body for our neurons. We have sodium channels throughout the entire body. And so why was I on like all of these medications like benzodiazepines, SSRIs, SNRIs, and like mood stabilizers and all of this? when I could just be on magnesium, right? And that's on the PBS, so the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. So it's not that expensive, and anyone can access it. And there's I'm not alone in taking magnesium for mental health. There's plenty of people that do, and there's been plenty of studies supporting that. But we're still so stuck in these ways of using barbaric methods of like trapping serotonin on a receptor, but then not focusing on gut health, where 50 to 80% of our serotonin is coming from our gut. Like that just doesn't make sense. Like you can trap all the serotonin you want, but you're not getting all of it in the first place. So it just leads to upping the dosage. And then you kind of end up, well, I ended up with this numbness, and then that kind of comes with its own side effects. Even if there's no side effects from the tablet itself, there's a side effect to being numb and not being able to feel anything good and not being able to feel anything bad. And I don't think that's talked about often enough. And there have been some more kind of newer atypical antidepressants like mirtazapine, agomelatine, all of these sort of antidepressants that don't work as an SSRI. They're different to that, but then there's all sorts of weight gain and stuff like that. And so you kind of, it always ends up being this self-fulfilling prophecy. And at least it was for me. Again, I can't speak for everybody, but there has to be another way, right? Like I wasn't addressing any of the social aspects of my life. I wasn't addressing any of the faith or purpose in my life. And I didn't have a good family life because of some of the things that happened with me and some of the honesty around how I dealt with that. And then, like addiction and stuff like that's been part of my past. And none of that really gets taken into account. It just goes, oh, you're sad very often. Oh, you can't work because you're too anxious. Like, here's a pill for that. And it's a very like reductive way of thinking when there's like so much that comes into mental health. As I kind of touched on earlier, like there's the 5 pillars of psychology, and that's been reframed kind of recently in kind of positive psychology. But where do you think that like Western, because you said that psychology and psychiatry wouldn't necessarily apply in the Western sense in South Africa. Where do you think Western psychology and the psychiatric models fall short in South Africa, or in Indigenous context as a whole?
See, South Africa first has to deal with its cultural issues, okay? If it deals with its cultural issues on a micro level first, okay? And everybody identifies, like if I come to Australia, I'm Australian. I'm not South African, I'm not Zimbabwean, I'm Australian, okay? That's the one culture that I must embody when I'm there in order to make my days and my habitat functional, because there's a code and there's a way Australians work and operate. You assimilate into it. If you don't, it's going to sound like a sore thumb and you're going to have a headache all your life while you're there. Right. In South Africa, there's no conformance. Okay. They're still designated. Right. I'm colored. You white. You Indian. You black. You keep your cultures, right? And your beliefs, and we'll impose whatever we want to impose on you. Can't work. It's not working. It's never going to work. So the black culture says, you're trying to use white psychology on me, or white psychiatry on me. You don't understand my people, which is true, because you've got the Aboriginal people in your place. And there's certain cultural ways they deal with stuff with herbs and with spirits and all this kind of thing. All right. To a certain extent, I don't understand the dynamics about it, but there is the 1% where it works. I don't know the science behind it. You may not. It's a mental thing. You drink this, you're looking at this, God, I can't drink this. And they tell you, drink this, and you're going to be okay. 99% of the time, that individual drinks whatever was concocted in that cup of various herbs, seems to balance him and comes out okay. All right? Science argues that it hasn't gone through clinical. So how can you say that it works? It needs to go through clinical trial. But do I need to do clinical trial to make what works for certain people? No. Let's work with that belief that you people in clinical trials do the same thing. One cup got super meds, the other cup's got sugar water. The belief structure in that person who's drinking the sugar meds thinks, you know what, I got some serious medicine, yeah, I'm going to be okay. And if you look at it, 90% of the sugar med drinking people come out okay with the belief that they were treated.
And that's the placebo effect, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm saying the same thing here, Jamie. We need to do that with mental health, because a lot of the mental health has been ingrained and instituted at micro level. So if we have to start re-educating a baby who's come out and sees that a white person is not a threat, a brown person is not a threat, an Indian person is not a threat, a Chinese is not a threat, we're all the same. How much have we done already for mental health at that point? Just like that. You know, it really ticks a lot of boxes. We're equal, right? We're different in our colors, but we're equal. Right, let's go play now. Okay, you're good at math, so you teach me. But you're good at English, you teach me. If we can pass that, just that level, me and you, we can sit and write this diary in 50 years' time and say, you know what, we did something right.
Is discrimination based on race not protected in South Africa?
It's not protected. It's not protected.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, like, it's certain. I might not understand the nuance, and so I'm a bit hesitant to kind of touch on it. But there's differences in class based off of what you look like, where you come from, the amount of melanin in your skin.
Blueprint is mine and Adele's relationship. Still causes heaps and heaps of issues till this day, because now our kids can't be categorized because we're a mixed couple.
Yeah.
So it's an issue on the spectrum, because South Africa has a designation. Are you black? Are you white? Are you colored? Are you Indian? Where do you fit there? It's a problem.
That's so reductive. Like it.
Yeah. So they come up with this word that the children said, my teacher said I'm peach. And of course, the dad hit the rope. What is peach? Who's peach? How can you designate a child as peach? You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's something wrong that we need to get rid of. I believe that if we get rid of just that, you've made progress. You really made progress. Because like if you do UK and Europe only see black and white. They don't care if you're Hispanic, whatever. It's either you're black or you're white. And they work on that basis. I don't know why we can't do the same. Can't do the same. Jamie, I'm going to have to love and leave you soon because I go to a shelter on Saturdays. But this has been great. This has been intuitive. It's been exactly what I thought it would be. But you and I on this journey now, we've got a lot of traction to do. I'd like to do another one in 3 months' time with you.
Yeah, for sure. Let's schedule it in. Before you go, just one more question. So for people that are interested in the Talk Sanctuary, how can people get involved with the Talk Sanctuary? Where are you located? Are you global? Are you online only? What's the go?
All right. So first form of contact is I'd like them to email me, Lenton at lenovoconsulting.com. That is my group company for the Talk Sanctuary. Send me an invite and let's have a conversation. Or you can WhatsApp me on 0027 797 837 299. If you want to move that from WhatsApp to Signal to whichever platform, I don't mind. The only place that I publish is Instagram proper. Facebook, I'm still soft on because I just want to make awareness on it. And until I've got all of the meat around the bones, will I then platform it on Facebook. But in the interim, yes, I'm available on Instagram, direct contact. Let's have the conversation because my views alone are not going to make enough changes. Collaboration in this stage is going to make a lot of changes because the elephant in the room is too big to bite.
Well, I can't believe that we planned to do this for an hour and a half, and it's definitely got a bit over. And I didn't even ask most of the questions. I've been taking notes furiously as we kind of go along, and so there's definitely a lot for me to research in, and I would love to chat again in 3 months and kind of see how things are going.
I don't know, maybe on the cards next year.
Awesome, sounds good.
Keep chasing your dad to pin you down.
All right, awesome. See you, mate.
It's left for me to say to you, Jamie, have a good Christmas and a very good New Year. Stay safe.
Happy holiday.
Stay in touch, and let me know if there's anything you need to know or soundboard. You got my WhatsApp. You can do that. I'm out at the time of the hours, so I may pick it up for you.
All right, awesome. Well, it's been lovely chatting, and yeah, stay safe. I mean, even just in the couple of weeks that we've been connected, like you've sent through some pretty wild stuff that's been happening. So like I just, and some of what you talked about today, I can't even imagine like kind of living through that just in general. Like, and so it's great that you're kind of setting up the structure to change it from the inside out. And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see how that changes.
Thank you. I hope I've made some impact, and I hope
I've got so many questions and so much stuff to research. It's really interesting.
Thank you. I know you're going to bed now, but yeah, take care. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.